About 130 years ago, an organization called Silent Night first appeared. At that time, only conflicts and disorder reigned in the world. The blood of numerous victims, life turned into darkness, and people lost faith in a bright tomorrow. And one day, to stop all this horror, the Miram Masters came together to found the Central Heavenly Alliance. The Alliance decided to create a clan to resist the Silent Night organization. The leader of the clan was Adam Bad. In the world of martial arts, he was considered a famous person. When the Northern Heavenly Clan was formed, the Central Alliance promised to provide him with any support. To defeat the Silent Night organization, the Heavenly Alliance helped the clan gain strength and also collect a huge amount of elixirs and techniques. Years passed and Albert Glenn became the second leader of the clan. After him was Noah Albee. And finally, the Northern Heavenly Clan received the recognition of people and gathered new followers. The fourth leader of the clan was the man known as the Great Wall of the North, and his name was Ray Tai. The four Northern Heavens became a reliable support for Ray Tai and the entire clan. Together, they were an invincible five that could deal with any enemies. The strongest of the Great Four of the Northern Heavens was Phil Wright. His fist could hit an enemy with lightning speed and throw him tens of meters away. The next four of the Northern Heavens was the Raging Hurricane, also known as Hugh D. With his spear, he could create a deadly hurricane among his enemies. The third strongest of the Great Four of Northern Heavens was the Phantom Cursed Blade, Earl Dew. With lightning speed, he overtook opponents who did not even have time to defend themselves. He was so fast. And the last of the Great Four of Northern Heavens was the Lord of Iron Blood, J. Paul. With his whip, he performed a real deadly dance for his enemies. The four strongest played a key role in pushing Silent Night away from the Northern Land. And on the day when the fight between Silent Night and the Northern Heavenly Clan reached its climax, Silent Night ceased to exist. As time passed and the Great Wall of the North fell, the eyes of his son, King, came to tears at what might happen to his father. Ray knelt in front of the entire Northern Heavenly Clan as if before a judge. The now former head of the clan looked at the people in front of him and thought that, apparently, only the strongest representatives had gathered here. The Nine Heavens, who were powerful people ruling the world of Miram, appeared at the hearing. Everyone present was wondering why the Central Heavenly Alliance itself had come. Sage Duke Ran, the genius who revived his family, his desire for knowledge allowing him to become the wisdom of the Heavenly Lord, approached the head of the clan, Ray Tai, with a question about the reasons for his denial of the truth, about why the one who resisted Silent Night betrayed his comrades. To the sage's accusations, Ray replied that he had always lived honestly, and his betrayal was complete nonsense. Duke Ran, with indifference in his eyes, told him that the four pillars of the Northern Heavenly Clan had opposed Ray, and he continued to lie. The head of the clan looked at each of his faithful comrades, but they all silently turned away from him. Ray was defeated by the fact that those with whom he fought shoulder to shoulder turned against him at such an important moment. With a laugh, the main character thought that now he was truly alone among everyone. With a smile, he looked at his son, showing with his entire appearance that everything would be fine. Looking threateningly at his former comrades, Ray thought that they had all conspired against him, and it would be impossible to get out of here. In any case, they would do everything to stop him. Roaring loudly, Ray shouted to the Central Celestial Alliance that he understood their plan. After hesitating a little, he shouted that he would submit to the Alliance. From his force, even the earth shook and fragments of stones flew around. The Central Heavenly Alliance whispered that Ray's inner strength was simply enormous, and that the Northern Heavenly Clan had become too strong, and now it had only become a hindrance for the Alliance. And as long as the Northern Heavenly Clan exists, the Alliance will not have complete control over the mainland. With all his strength, Ray Tai shouted into the crowd that from this day on, the clan was disbanded, and all followers must leave it and find a new home. This was the last order from the leader of the Northern Heavenly Clan, Ray T. The main character's only request was not to lay a finger on his son, who lost his mother when he was a child and grew up in the barren northern lands. Duke Ran thought that it would be nice to finally end his family, but the crowd would definitely not allow him to do this. The elder had no choice but to simply agree to keep this promise. Otherwise, the leader of the rival clan would turn against them. Swinging his sword in front of him, Ray turned to his only son, King, with a smile. The boy, realizing his father's intentions, widened his eyes in horror. The father, with pain in his eyes, asked his son for forgiveness, smiled at him for the last time, and plunged the sword into his chest. Tears flowed down King's cheeks. Holding out his hand, he rushed to his father with all his might. The Northern Sky Clan was created to protect people from the Silent Night, and they have fulfilled their duty with honor for many centuries. But in the end, the fourth leader of the clan, Ray Tai, was betrayed by his own comrades. 3 years passed. The guy slowly opened his eyes and was surprised that he was tied with ropes to a log, and a threatening crowd of men stood in front of him. Apparently, the main one was already tired of waiting for the boy to wake up. Before he could finish speaking, the boy received a blow. Staring at the people with displeasure, the guy asked why they were doing this. With a malicious smile, the chief told everyone to look at the eyes of this bastard, who turned out to be stronger than he seems. The man made it clear that he was not as kind as the previous group that was watching the boy, and he might not expect kind treatment. He was irritated by the fact that he would have to spend the next 3 years here because of some kid. Leaning closer to the young man's face, the fat man threateningly asked where the guy had put his weapons and equipment, and if he didn't tell, it would be easier to kill him and return back to the mainland. King just lowered his head, which was covered by his long black hair, and laughed loudly. The group was left in shock that the boy was not shaking with fear in front of them, but even had the conscience to laugh almost in their faces. The fat man, stunned by the guy's behavior, told the boy that he didn't fully understand the whole situation in which he found himself. It would be easier to throw him into the wasteland to be torn apart by the wolves, because they don't want to spend the next 3 years in this shitty place. The boy only laughed again and replied that they couldn't do that. The main one, realizing that he really couldn't do this, glanced at his accomplice, who all this time was holding a knife near the guy's fingers. The thug, understanding the boss's signal, slashed the young man's index finger with a knife. The boy screamed from the pain that pierced him and the blood gushing from the wound. The guy, limp and lowering his head, shouted about the 9 heavens. After pausing, he reproachfully recalled the promise made by the Central Northern Alliance to his father. The fat man repeating King's words in bewilderment. The guy raised his head and looked at his tormentors with anger and tears in his eyes. The Silent Night organization has now completely disappeared from memory. Her existence is erased forever, as if she never existed. All that remains of her are only memories of those terrible times. After the first line of defense against Silent Night was disbanded, using the sudden disappearance of this organization as an excuse, the Central Heavenly Alliance decided to send mercenaries to look after these lands. The real reason for the mercenaries' arrival was to keep an eye on a certain person, in case he starts studying the Northern Heavenly Clan's martial arts and planning his revenge. Security will closely monitor him to make sure he sits still, because the person you couldn't take your eyes off was none other than the heir of the Northern Heavenly Clan and the last living descendant of the founder King T, who was already 16 years old. The last person who followed the boy for 3 years was the former leader of the clan, who allowed King to read only ordinary books so that he would not learn martial arts. Everything related to martial arts was taken away by the Central Heavenly Alliance and the Northern Heavens Four. And even after a thorough check, they could not find any other techniques in books. Meanwhile, after several years of inactivity due to the loss of his father, the boy began to slowly come to his senses. After 3 years of stagnation, he declared that he needed to earn a living and began to learn blacksmithing. Watching the boy, the leader of the third group of mercenaries of the Central Heavenly Alliance, Greg Robin, found it difficult to believe that the heir of the great clan wants to make a living as a blacksmith. But no hidden techniques were found either. But if this is still true, then there is no point spend 3 years here. No, the deputy leader of the third group of mercenaries of the Central Heavenly Alliance, Aaron Fall, did not respond to his boss's thoughts out loud. King, leaving the building, looked for a second at his new caretakers and, turning away, walked on. On the way, he thought that these must be new guards, and they could cause a headache. Stopping at the entrance to a tall building called the House of 10,000 Spirits, the boy went inside. As the building's name states, this place housed thousands and thousands of martial arts scrolls. But the four of the Northern Heavens took everything they could from here. Everything that related to sword handling techniques went to the Phantom Cursed Blade. Earl Dew. Everything that related to hand-to-hand combat techniques was taken by the Demon Fist, Phil Wright. Everything related to leg techniques was taken by the Raging Hurricane, Hugh D., and everything related to chi cultivation was taken by the Lord of Iron Blood, J. Paul. Almost all of the Northern Heavenly Clan's disciples followed the Northern Heavens Great Four, and each of them took part in the destruction of the clan in order to take a leading position on the mainland. Sitting alone by the window, King was visited by sad thoughts that he was left alone. No, he was abandoned by everyone. At night, the guy was haunted by nightmares about his death, who repeated that from now on King was the head of the Northern Heavenly Clan. In the morning, the boy raised his head from the pillow screaming, but quickly calmed down, realizing that this was just another bad dream. The area around the Northern Heavenly Clan had become 10,000 meters extinct. It could easily be said that time had stood still, and the clan's ruin reflected the state King was in. After waking up, he ate the leftover rice, and then went to the forge to further learn the craft, thereby earning a living. After a hard day of work, the boy climbed onto the roof of the House of 10,000 Spirits and, looking at the setting sun, thought about how pathetic he now seemed. No, he did not rise to show his weakness to his enemies. He rose to build and strengthen his own will. The boy walked and thought that if he failed now, it would mean that his father tried in vain, and the life he gave him was worthless. The boy did not even suspect that while he was walking, immersed in his thoughts, he was being watched and would soon be tied up. When a member of the mercenary team cut the guy's finger, the deputy captain said that they shouldn't go that far. He's just a child. The young man raised his head and said threateningly that the mercenaries did not have permission to do this to him. The boy continued to tell the head that the Central Heavenly Alliance had taken everything clean. If he wanted to kill the guy, he could try to do it. It's just that the disciples of the Northern Heavens 4 are following them because they were forced 3 years ago. But there are still people loyal to the Northern Clan. For killing a guy, they will not let them get away. They will immediately see the difference between suicide and murder, and then they will come for the lives of the mercenaries. The previous guards were the same, but they waited quietly for the last 3 years because they knew what could happen to them for killing King. Greg Robin roared at the boy's insolence and was about to pull his sword out of its sheath and kill the boy for his words. But his deputy stopped him in time, preventing him from doing what he had planned. Aaron Fall explained that it would be better to let the boy go, because there may be a grain of truth in his words. They have already searched this place and have not found any martial arts scrolls or valuable artifacts. Greg reluctantly agreed with his deputy and ordered the bastard to be released, but the boy did not want to end the conversation so easily. The young man warned ominously that his new guards were only uninvited guests and should therefore behave accordingly. And if they did so, he would forget about today's incident. In response, the fat man only looked at the guy angrily and replied that he should sit quietly. Otherwise, the Central Heavenly Alliance and the Great Four of the Northern Heavens would give permission to kill him without delay. One of the mercenary members quickly cut the ropes on the boy's arms, and the stick king was hanging from fell to the floor with a crash. Aaron, with relief in his voice, ordered his subordinates to leave, but to carefully monitor the boy's every move. Although the blood loss was not great, King almost fell to the floor because his arms and legs were so numb from the tight ropes. I feel guilty for what I did. The deputy head handed the guy a bandage so that he could bandage his wound. Out of resentment, King did not immediately take the bandage handed to him, but the aching wound made itself felt, so he had to do it. Realizing that the guy was in pain because of them, Aaron silently left the house with his head down. With tears in his eyes and silent resentment, King began to wipe the blood from his finger. Falling to his knees, the young man asked a question into the void. Why people loyal to the Northern Heavenly Clan did not pull him out of this hell. And having answered his own question, he said that they all simply don't care. They are just waiting for his imminent death. It was already morning when King climbed the stairs of the heart of the clan. Leaning on the railing with his sore hand, everything had really been taken away from here a long time ago. Writhing in pain, he climbed onto the roof of the seat and stared at the once prosperous clan. The clan may be empty, but its heart still beats. The greatest secret of the clan, which even the 4 great pillars do not know. The greatest martial arts scroll of the Northern Heavenly Clan was the clan itself. As the sun sets in the east, the ruined walls known as the Walls of 10,000 Spirits begin to cast shadows across the land. Mysterious drawings on the walls turn into writing on the ground, written in the forgotten language of the Kingdom of the Lower Moon. The Wall of 10,000 Spirits was built by the first leader of the clan and contained all his knowledge and was passed on to Ray T 4 generations later. For this reason, during his childhood, instead of training his son in martial arts, his father taught him the language of the Lower Moon Kingdom. To all other people, these writings were just old carved engravings on the walls. All this was just so that only King T could read them. It might seem like the guy is just wasting his time standing there, so the guards have to keep thinking that way? No, he has to make them think that way. All the teachings of the past leaders are written here. King still has a long way to go before he masters the final martial arts scroll of the Northern Heavenly Clan, the Way of 10,000 Spirits. As long as he is under the supervision of the Central Northern Alliance, he cannot attract too much attention to himself. The guy must keep everything a secret and patiently wait for the chance. The boy did not even notice the cart approaching the clan while he was absorbed in himself. King rushed headlong to the main gate to meet Mr. Marl. Marl Chuck was a former member of the Heavenly Northern Clan. Self-defense was the limit of his martial arts skills, so he was considered the weakest in the clan. However, he was loyal to the clan like no other. Unlike other people, Marl was very happy to see the boy, calling him Young Master. After leaving the clan, the man began working as a traveling merchant and did everything he could to help King T. Marl Chuck was an orphan with no talent for martial arts. While other clans refused to accept him, the Northern Heavenly Clan took him in. The leader of the group, Ray T, did everything to teach his ward the basics so that he could at least defend himself. Marl never forgot this kindness, and therefore, when everyone left the clan, he was the only one who continued to help King. The boy was very glad to see his mentor again. They exchanged pleasantries like old good friends. Marl even noticed a noticeable increase in the guy's height. King thanked Marl for coming such a long way for him. The boy's bandaged finger could not escape the man's sharp gaze. With a bitter expression on his face, Marl asked his ward who did this, whether it was the new guards who had arrived recently. Not bothering Marl with his problems, the boy replied that it wasn't them who did it, but that he just accidentally got hurt when he was forging. Without allowing the man to object, King quickly turned the topic to the food brought to him, and Marley had no choice but to simply continue the conversation. The guy was burdened by the fact that his mentor did not live for himself, but continued to help him. But Marl was so grateful to the clan that he simply could not leave the boy in this situation. King was touched that Marl brought not only food and medicine, but also a warm winter blanket. Along with food, medicine, and everything else, there was a large black stone in the cart. The guy was a little puzzled by this. The man replied that he received this stone when he was in Unama. This stone fell from heaven, and the whole tribe worshipped it as a deity. With grief, Marl noted that this tribe was exterminated, so the stone no longer belongs to anyone. King repeated his mentor's words with a crazed expression on his face. Marley added that it looked like the tribe was fighting the Broken Fist clan. The boy sadly noted that the Broken Fist also decided to settle in Unama after the betrayal of the Northern Heavenly Clan. Each of the Great Four founded their own clan in Murami. The Cursed Phantom Blade assembled an elite troop of Kamika users and settled in the west. They became known as the Defenders of the Western Skies. The Raging Hurricane brought together a group that became known as the Flowing Skies, but they remained inactive for a long time. The Lord of the Ironblood, having received the greatest combat power, built the Iron Castle in the north. The Demon Fist, who was known for his cruel and vicious nature, created the bloodthirsty group Broken Fists. Seeing that the young gentleman was completely sad, Marl remembered that he had brought iron for blacksmithing. Not wanting his mentor to worry about him, King said with a smile that he was using the iron wisely. But for now, he needed to go indoors because it was getting cold and it was snowing. Taking the sacks from the cart, Marley and King walked into the house, laughing and chatting along the way like good old friends. All this time, the deputy head of the mercenaries, Aaron, was watching them. He thought that there was nothing special about this old man, but his devotion to the clan was impressive, and the boy was now in such a pitiful state. He walks aimlessly, wastes time in the forge, climbs to the top of the tower and looks at the sky. He doesn't even feel chi. With a sad look, Aaron was thinking that this kid had nothing. That time when he was talking about the Central Heavenly Alliance and the Great Four, if King had clarified his story, it would have seemed more plausible. For his age, the guy seems very wise. It's even sad. If he had learned the techniques of the clan, he would have become one of the strongest. While Aaron was thinking about the boy, a messenger hawk flew overhead and the man took off after it. The head of the gang was crying and screaming, because those who sent them to rot in this place are now saying that important guests will soon arrive here. But this is not Don Tin Lake for them to admire. The captain angrily told his deputy to begin restoring one of the royal buildings in the morning. In response, Aaron had no choice but to simply agree with his captain's orders. At this time, King and Marl had already reached the room and with relief threw off the heavy trunks with provisions. The guy poured hot and aromatic tea for the man, who in return praised the young master's magnificent tea. King poured himself some tea, simultaneously asking Marl about the current situation in the world. The man paused and replied that everything was fine. But then I remembered that everyone is now talking about the martial artist George Sinclair, who became famous in Muram. He said that he would fight and overcome 100 martial artists, so he is now the center of attention. King even choked on his tea when he heard the name George Sinclair. After all, he is the third son of the invincible master, Dan Sinclair, one of the 9 heavens. At first, people did not take him seriously and even mocked him. After all, he was only 18. But every time he challenged someone, He left behind himself into chaos and destruction. Now he inspires fear and respect among the residents of Murim. Now George Sinclair has already had about 93 fights, and he has not lost a single one of them. And if he defeats 7 more, he will set a new record in the history of Murim. People privately call him the one who killed 100. King was surprised that this guy is only 18 years old, and he has already achieved a lot. Marl added that at this rate he can become a legend in the world of Murim. Now he is heading north, and many clans are now on edge because of this. King hoped to hear more interesting news from the outside world, but the man no longer had anything to add. So, over warm conversations with a mug of hot tea, time flew by unnoticed and night came. The young master invited Marl to spend the night with him, but he reluctantly refused. The man promised to return after the winter. Leaving, he simultaneously apologized that he could no longer be useful. The boy exclaimed that the gentleman had done more than was required. They said goodbye near the gate, and Marl slowly went back. The guy stood for a long time and waved after him. On the way back to the house, King was called out by the deputy leader of the gang. He was just looking for him. The man wanted to warn the boy that an important guest from the Central Heavenly Alliance was going to visit them in the spring, and they wanted to restore and use the Huachan Palace. King said, with indifference, that they could do whatever they wanted with the building. It had been empty for a long time anyway. King, turning away, said that if that was all, then he would go. Aaron only sheepishly agreed. The guy wandered lonely under the falling flakes of snow to his place, looking around along the way. Arriving home, the young man noticed the wet snow in front of the door. He realized that while he was away, someone had sneaked into his house. King did not have time to turn around when someone with a bloody hand raised a dagger over his neck. The guy was surprised that this someone was a woman. She asked who he was. Dissatisfied with the woman's impudence, the young man asked her the same question. But someone didn't like this arrangement. She pressed a dagger on the main character's neck so that he started bleeding. Under pain of death, King told her that he was the owner of this place. The girl was fleetingly surprised that the heir of the Northern Heavenly clan was in front of her. King took advantage of the pause and now asked her to answer the question. Before she could say a word, the dagger fell to the floor with a clang. King turned around and saw that the girl had lost consciousness, most likely due to a large loss of blood. There were deep wounds on her shoulders, chest, and face, from which blood oozed, soaking all the girl's clothes. The guy didn't know what was happening here, where the girl came from and who she was. Maybe she was a criminal. The young man pressed his ear to the girl's chest to see if she was alive, and, fortunately, she was still breathing. Taking the girl in his arms, King ran out into the street and rushed to another building. While the guy was putting the attacker on the bed, her shoulder was exposed, revealing a deep wound from which blood was pouring. She was poisoned. It looked as if she was being attacked by deadly poisonous qi. King had a protective antidote in reserve that counters the poison and provides treatment to protect the internal circulation of qi. The guy's expression became doomed when he realized that he only had one antidote in stock. He remembered very well that Marl was sacrificing a lot to get it for his ward. And if something had happened to King, then he would have needed this antidote more. He doesn't even know this woman to spend such a valuable thing on her. But, realizing that she could soon die, King could not afford to remain idle. Carefully taking thin needles out of the box, the guy carefully began to stick them into the skin around the wound. There were now 5 needles stuck around the deep wound. Noticing that the wound had stopped bleeding, the young man exhaled with relief. He did everything he could. Exhausted, he looked at the woman and wondered who she was. Lately, surprisingly, King has been meeting more and more unexpected guests. It was only early morning when the girl finally opened her eyes. With a stunned expression on her face, she sat up abruptly, but a sharp pain in her shoulder made itself felt. The girl did not understand what happened, where she was, and, finally, who cured her. While the woman was coming to her senses, King appeared from behind the curtain and asked her to wait another second while the porridge was cooked. Seeing the guy, the girl began to remember fragments of last night, how she came here wounded and attacked him, and then lost consciousness from a large loss of blood. She didn't understand how, after yesterday's attack, he decided to cure her. While she was thinking about this, King was already hurrying towards her with a tray on which stood a cup of hot and fragrant porridge. He even thought that she had died while she had been sleeping for 3 days. The girl defiantly asked why someone like him could cure her. The guy replied that at first he couldn't understand whether she had been sent to kill him or whether she was a passerby on the verge of death. But anyway, he couldn't just stand there and watch someone die right in front of him, so he couldn't leave her there. Confused, King added that at least he didn't want anyone to die in his house again. The girl doubted that the guy in front of her did not do this out of evil intentions, and she also could not feel the qi from him. Maybe he really helped her out of the kindness of his heart. As he left, the young man added that she should hurry up and eat. even though he had been feeding her for the last 3 days. Now the girl would be able to eat on her own. Looking at the guy, the girl said that she would stay here until she fully recovered. King was even amused by such impudence. While getting dressed, the guy displeasedly asked the name of his impudent patient. The girl didn't understand why he should know her name. Pulling on his scarf, King turned around and yelled that he not only cured her, but also allowed her to eat and sleep here for free. And this impudent girl decided to stay here without even asking the owner's permission. So she should at least say her name. Taken aback by this tone and realizing that her savior was right, the girl introduced herself as Charlotte Faust. Having calmed down, the guy told Charlotte that there were clothes and some food in the pantry. So if she ate modestly, then the food should be enough for several months. Besides, he didn't know how long this nag would remain here. Closing the door behind him and not turning around, King said that he would be in the building opposite, and if the girl needed anything, she would know where to look for him, he also reminded, so that she eats the porridge before it gets cold. Left alone, Charlotte thought that she first needed to restore her internal energy and slowly remove the poison from her body. She still didn't understand why King was trying so hard to help her. Maybe he knows who she is, although the girl was an unknown person. But in any case, he is very strange, she thought. Sitting again in his favorite place, King looked into the distance and thought that this girl was strange, judging by her wounds, and he was taking such a risk without even knowing her. But he himself allowed her to stay here. Maybe the guy really was that lonely. Pushing away conflicting thoughts, King said the girl's name with a soft smile on his face and thought that it was very beautiful. Nearby, the mercenaries had already begun repairing one of the buildings. Construction was in full swing. While his subordinates worked tirelessly, their leader slept peacefully on a futon, his belly stuffed to capacity with chicken and sake. Coming out of his house onto the street, King looked with concern at the opposite house where Charlotte lived. She had not left for 3 days. The guy was worried about this sight, but did not dare to go to her. At this time, Charlotte was meditating. She managed to restore only half of her internal energy. Under normal conditions, she would have needed to fully restore her internal energy and only then remove the poison from the body. But there was no time for this. This is one of the most dangerous poisons called all-consuming flame of darkness. Charlotte did not know what antidote her savior used, but since the medicinal properties began to dry up, the effect of the antidote almost disappeared and the girl became increasingly worse. It is becoming more and more difficult to fight the poison. It is dangerous, but the girl needs to use all the internal energy that she managed to restore and remove the poison from the body. Gritting her teeth, Charlotte strained with all her might, trying to regain her energy. Unfortunately, the antidote wore off and the poison began to spread throughout the body, causing unbearable pain. On the verge of losing consciousness, the girl thought that this was the end, and she still did not thank King for saving her life. The next second, someone in a black cape and a mask on his face burst into the room through the window. Taking Charlotte into his arms, he felt the skin around her wound with his fingers. The man addressed her as a young mistress and asked her to quickly wake up, focus, and use all her internal energy. Not wanting to give up her life so quickly, Charlotte listened to the man and concentrated as much as possible. Someone, seeing that the girl listened to him, told her to direct chi into her fingers. Finally, the poison was removed from Charlotte's body and her life was no longer in danger. The exhausted girl sighed with relief. If the man had been a little more late, she would have already been dead. The girl was surprised when the man took off the mask from his face. Because it was Kai Hall, he spent a long time looking for where she hid, so he apologized for being late. Kai lives to serve the master and the young mistress, and in the end he failed in protecting both, so he is ready to accept the punishment with honor. Fortunately, Charlotte was in perfect order, and if not for him, she would have been dead long ago. In addition, they were ambushed. Kai could not have done anything in this situation, but the girl was still wondering where the man had been all this time, and when he found her, Kai replied that he was also wounded and was hiding all this time, but found Mrs. just recently. Charlotte didn't understand why Kai didn't go looking for the master first, but the man replied that he wasn't the one to worry about. Now Kai's first priority is to help Charlotte recover, and her idea to hide in the Northern Sky Clan was a wise one, because all these bastards will have a hard time believing that they could hide here. Kai thought that it would be better for them to stay here for a while so that the mistress regains her inner strength. The man asked the girl to stay here while he looked for the gentleman, and very soon Kai would return with his orders. At this time, unaware of another guest, King was working in his forge, silently repeating the lines of the scripture. The first source of energy is promised by the shadow. The second source of energy will change the rules, and 10,000 will become one. As the light covers the world, he alone will hold the shadow. The source of all existence may cover everything, but the shadow will always be visible. The second energy can change everything, bringing everything together. The light can cover the whole world, but it will enclose the only true shadow. Just as the void in the eternal night can stretch across the sky forever, the inner shadow must be the same as it exists within that darkness. The guy wanted to practice, so he looked around to make sure that no one was watching him. The first technique from the scripture of 10,000 shadows is inner shadow. The first leader of the sect was a vagabond. He became a brilliant swordsman who was able to create this technique martial arts after many years of wandering. Because the essence of this martial art is shrouded in mystery and darkness, just by looking at King, it would be difficult for most martial artists to tell whether he has internal energy and whether he knows martial arts. Even after 4 generations, the 10,000 Shadows technique had not reached the highest point of its potential and was preserved as an unfinished martial art. It is this martial art that King is now studying. If he had the choice to learn the 10,000 Shadows technique or not, I would choose the latter. However, since the Central Heavenly Alliance not only took away all the martial arts techniques, they were keeping a close eye on him, so he had no other choice. Taking a katana from his arsenal, which he forged with his own hands, the guy began to practice the 10,000 Shadows technique. After a little practice, King got hungry and thought that was enough for today. So he got dressed and left the forge. At this time, having come to her senses, Charlotte went out to enjoy the frosty winter day, and at the same time look at the famous Northern Heavenly Clan. King was walking towards her, saying from afar that the girl looked better today. The guy was worried that something might have happened to the girl because she had not gone outside for the last few days. Entering his house, he invited Charlotte to join him for dinner. The girl didn't know what to say, but still followed King. While a great opportunity arose, she sheepishly thanked the guy for saving her life. Taking the tray with the fragrant food, King was surprised that this nag decided to thank him. In complete silence, they sat down at the dining table, on which there were already cups of rice and tasty meat. The girl was in no hurry to start eating, so King told her that the food was not poisoned, so she could not hold back. Charlotte found it strange that the guy didn't even ask her anything. With his mouth full, King asked what he should ask her, to which the girl replied if he was interested in who she was. The guy wasn't going to pry into other people's affairs, so he didn't even think about asking about it. But Charlotte was wondering why King so easily sheltered the stranger. Continuing to eat, the guy replied that if he found out who she was, he would no longer be able to enjoy the time spent with her. Charlotte was surprised by the guy's answer and looked at him as if he were stupid. King, unhappy with being called a name, shouted at the girl to just eat. Otherwise, he could no longer listen to her growling stomach. As usual, at sunset, King climbed onto the roof of the building, pondering the fact that his body had already begun to change. There is another secret inside the wall of 10,000 shadows, so it's time to study the Blade of Inner Darkness, a mysterious sword technique that was created for killing. King studied the basics of fencing to properly learn this sword technique. To practice some more, King went back to the forge. It was already late at night when Charlotte decided to meditate in order to quickly restore her strength. King was already pretty tired. Forging another katana, sweat rolled down his body, which he wiped with a towel. Looking back, the guy jumped from the unexpected appearance of Charlotte. She was quietly squatting and watching him for a long time. King did not notice her either because he was concentrating well, or because his senses were dulled. Charlotte was looking for a guy because she was hungry and wanted to invite him to eat. The young man was furious because of the impudence of this girl. She had been sitting on his neck for 3 months now and had no intention of returning home. The guy's tone didn't bother Charlotte at all, so she continued to ask him to feed her. Under the girl's gaze, King gave in and called her to eat, although he did not understand why he was doing this for a stranger. After 3 months of living in this place, Charlotte realized that the heir of the Northern Heavenly Clan not only did not know martial arts, but he also did not have the foundation to study them. This guy was simply wasting his time on blacksmithing. Noticing that Charlotte continued to sit still, King hurried her, because she herself asked to feed her. The girl jumped to the floor and ran after him. Finally, the guys sat down to eat at the table, although King made fun of his guest a little. After some time, the Northern Heavenly Clan was visited by very expected guests. These were people from the Central Heavenly Alliance, the 4 Dead Heavens, the Crimson Force of the Demonic King, Gordon Joe, his 14-year-old daughter Ava Joe, and his 19-year-old son Alfie Joe, and also the Rand family from the Central Heavenly Alliance, the knowledge seeker Duke Rand and his granddaughter Helga. All of them were important guests within the walls of this clan. Stopping in front of the gate, General Green Clark of the Dead Heaven 4 shouted if anyone was alive. The next second, the gate opened, and a bunch of mercenaries ran out to greet the guests. The head of the gang, obediently bowing his head, introduced himself as Ars Robin, captain of the 3rd mercenary group of the Central Heavenly Alliance. The general, getting straight to the point, asked if the chambers were ready for them. The captain replied that he himself had personally prepared chambers for them and was ready to take the guests inside, because due to such a long and tiring journey they must be tired. As he was about to follow the captain, one of the arriving guests noticed Aaron. At first the man thought he had made a mistake, but no, it was definitely Aaron. It turns out that Cole and Aaron are good old friends. The guest tried to attract the attention of his friend, but Aaron chose to ignore him. He was clearly not happy about this meeting. Several dozen newcomers entered the clan and hurried further inland to follow the escort. Helga even felt a little sorry for the once prosperous Northern Sky clan, which was now in ruins. Alfie unceremoniously answered her that this is how our world works. If you lose your strength, then you die. A hunting dog is considered a good example because after the hunt, no one needs it anymore. His sister, Ava, was very unhappy with her brother's rudeness. Still unaware of the arriving guests, Charlotte and King calmly walked down the street. The girl was dissatisfied that they always eat only meat, and the guy, in turn, was dissatisfied with the girl's impudence. Coming around the corner of the house, the young man turned his attention to the crowd of people, while Charlotte unceremoniously stuck her tongue out at him. They stopped in front of the people, making no attempt to greet them. Aaron and Greg widened their eyes in surprise when they saw an unfamiliar girl within the walls of the clan, whose presence they did not even know about. Alfie, Helga, and Ava paid attention only to King, reacting positively to his appearance. The guys, and especially King, did not show much friendliness or enthusiasm when meeting the guests. The girl was tense due to the fact that she could not feel any of these strangers. Most likely her senses were dulled, so she needed to concentrate and not weaken her defenses. Alfie Joe was the first to make contact with King, introducing himself and suggesting that he was the heir to the Northern Sky clan. The man also introduced Helga and his younger sister, who waved her hand at King with special friendliness. The clan heir, after a short silence, decided to introduce himself. He introduced Charlotte, who had been standing next to him all this time, as his cousin, who was temporarily staying with him. The captain of the mercenaries did not understand how they could not notice the presence of a stranger, so he angrily turned to his deputy, saying that by tomorrow they would find out who she was. Aaron only meekly agreed to carry out the order. Alfie, staring at King, was impressed that he even knew who they were. The guy only answered that he had heard a lot about them, because their names are known throughout Muram. Mr. Joe, with a predatory smile, suggested we skip the formalities and talk later. Greg, still angry that this impudent person dared to bring someone without permission, was thinking about teaching him another lesson. The next second, fawning over the guests, Greg led them further into the chambers of the Huachin Palace. While King was moving away from an unexpected acquaintance, Charlotte looked at him and thought that he was not as stupid as she suspected. He knew how to behave correctly and was able to lie without blinking an eye. When the guys went further, the girl remembered that the fat man behaved like an owner, although she thought that the owner of these places was King. It was already night when Alfie Joe and General Green went out onto the balcony of the building. Mr. Joe came here to enjoy the former glory of the Northern Heavenly Clan. But upon arrival, he realized that this place was so miserable. The general was silent, so the guy continued to say that peace on the mainland is just an illusion created by the old men from the Central Heavenly Alliance. They do not want their system to be destroyed, and if they could, they would live forever to continue to use this system for their own purposes. The general finally perked up, replying that he must do his best to help the future masters of the 4 deadly heavens. Alfie chuckled and turned to his general, saying that he would have to wait a few decades before Mr. Joe would inherit the 4 deadly skies. But he didn't plan to live that long, so this place would be the start of his journey, and something impressive. With a predatory smile, Alfie added that there was something important left and he had to deal with it. During this time, King was again working in the forge. He didn't know what was behind him watching until he heard from Alfie that he had never imagined that the sound of a hammer could sound so pleasant. Without looking back, King became worried that he had not noticed him, although he controlled the area. The man was impressed that King, who has no internal energy, could handle the heat of the forge well. Although this place is too boring for him, it feels like time has stopped here. Taking one of the blades from the shelf, Alfie asked the guy how he could live in such a place. King only looked at the uninvited guest with hostility and remained silent. Running 2 fingers along the blade of the blade, the man added that this weapon was very good and could be sold for a lot of money. In a moment, Alfie calmly pointed the blade at the guy's chest, causing him to open his mouth in amazement. Mr. Joe did not believe that the heir of the Northern Wall did not study martial arts, and if he really gave up, he would have died long ago. King didn't know what to do in this situation. If he fought him, it would only get worse. Not to mention that this man was the son of one of the 9 heavens from the Central Heavenly Alliance. He cannot yet reveal his power, because then everything he has endured will become meaningless. Alfie just stared bloodthirsty at the guy, waiting for him to start fighting for his life. King realized that Alfie was not joking when he, like a snake, made an ejection in his direction. To repel the attack, the young man exerted all his strength in his fist. His eyes lit up with determination to repel the intruder. Watching the boy, Alfie was surprised by the boy's determination. No longer able to control himself, King wanted to stop so as not to fight with him. If he couldn't detect it earlier, then this guy is a master of martial arts, and there is a chance that King will be killed for using the techniques and for using them incorrectly. If he has to choose, he must choose what will increase his chances of survival. Deciding not to fight Mr. Joe, King exposed himself to a blow to the shoulder with a blade. Having pierced the guy with a blade, Alfie noticed a very strange chi emanating from King. The next moment, Helga and her assistant flew into the forge, shouting to stop. The women ran to the wounded man to stop his bleeding. King, screaming in pain, praised the gods that the blow was not critical. Just as King wanted, Alfie believed that he really didn't know martial arts because he couldn't dodge such a light attack. But if that's the case, then what kind of strange chi was it? Maybe his senses were failing him, although this was quite possible, considering the constant tension since his arrival. Taking her mind off the injured man, Mrs. Run yelled at Alfie for his reckless behavior. Mr. Joe at first did not react to the girl's cry, thinking that he needed to rest. But keep a close and slow eye on this boy. Throwing down the sword, he spread his arms and calmly said that he thought he could dodge something so easy. As he left, he said that this guy was pathetic and let Helga deal with him. The girl put the spiritual recovery pill in the guy's mouth, a medicine known for its restorative effects. With it, the wound will heal faster. Helga apologized for herself and Alfie. She had no idea that Master Joe would be so cruel. From the burning pain, King could not utter a word to answer the girl. Seeing that the guy was feeling very bad, the woman offered to walk him to his room, apologizing to him at the same time. It was already morning when King slowly began to open his eyes. All the time he slept, Charlotte looked after him, and now she was sitting in front of his bed. Looking sadly at the guy, she knew who did this to him. But King stubbornly refused to confess. Enraged by the guy's silence, Charlotte called him an idiot. Even if he was weaker than them, he should have at least resisted. Or if he couldn't do that, then he could have just tried to run away. Calming the angry girl, King gently covered her hand with his. He thanked her for her concern. Apart from Mr. Marl, no one had reprimanded him for a long time. Not expecting such revelations from the rude King, Charlotte hit him on the arm. She turned away to hide her flushed face. The girl didn't want to, but still told King that she would have to leave soon. Asking the girl again, the guy tried to rise on his elbows, ignoring the feeling that all his insides were destroyed. The other day, Kai appeared to Charlotte while she was meditating with good news. It came from a master who was safe and fully recovered. The girl was glad to hear good news from her assistant. Kai added that they would have to move out soon, so the young mistress should get ready. At this time, a man stood on a rock and looked at the northern abandoned land, which had a strong vital energy. Noticing someone's presence, the man asked them not to hide like rats, but to show up. Large mounds began to rise in the ground behind the man. Creatures in hats crawled out, one of whom praised the stranger's keen sense of smell. They asked who he was and where he was going. The stranger noticed that these bastards had a rather strange weapon that he had never seen before. The QE emanating from them is not similar to that which emanated from the martial artists he fought with before. It turns out that there are still martial arts that the stranger has not met. He likes the northern region more and more. The man scornfully called these creatures mole-shaped bastards and replied that he was not going to answer to them. The creature calmly continued to say that it would spare him if the man quietly left here. Confident in his abilities, the stranger laughed and told them to get out of here while he was still polite. Apparently, the chief of these beings called the man an arrogant fool. They will believe that he came to help that woman. Preparing for the attack, the intruder told them that he did not know about any woman, but if they were looking for a fight, then he was ready to fight. The creatures all attacked him together with their strange weapons using the hidden power of demonic flame. The stranger turned out to be not so easy to defeat. He even became even more excited about this battle. Strange people did not expect that this guy could survive after their blow. Using the light in his hand, the man wanted to cut the chains fired at him. Realizing that the end could come to them, the chief ordered his relatives to retreat. Without having time to retreat, the creatures flew several tens of meters away due to a large explosion. They were surprised that this guy had instantly dealt with all the hidden ghosts. so they needed to hurry up and unsheath their bloody blades. They use blood for bloody destruction and will finish off the enemy in one hit. They fought again, but the man was much stronger, even though these creatures were not inferior to him. As a result, the stranger prevailed over his opponents, but there were numerous lacerations on his body. These people use the bone flash technique, in which the opponent sacrifices his body to try to kill his enemy. The man realized that these bastards were not average martial artists, but were much stronger than he thought, even though he didn't know who they were, so he had to leave one alive to question. He thought angrily that even a fast swordmaster was not as strong as them. In any case, he will not allow anyone to stand in his way to the Northern Heavenly clan. When King felt better, he decided to go outside and met Helga there, who was going to give him medicine. The boy told her that this was not his first wound, so there was no need to worry. Still worried, the woman once again apologized for Mr. Joe's actions and for breaking into his home without permission. King only wished to have fun while she was here. Helga was amazed that even after what happened, he treated them with kindness. She expected Master Li to dislike them, especially since her grandfather was one of the 9 heavens from the Central Heavenly Alliance. Helga, trying to win over King, asked him to believe that she was not like her bloodthirsty grandfather, and if the guy asked her for something, she would do it without hesitation. All this time, the bodyguard of the Rand family, Goldie Leg, was watching these two from the roof of one of the houses. Entering his chambers, Mr. Joe was very frightened by Lady Rand, who addressed him. He even thought that it was a ghost. With a deadly look on her face, she turned to Alfie and warned him not to get involved with Mr. Li. Wanting to quickly get rid of the girl who scared him, he said that he did not think that King would not be able to evade his attack. In any case, he thinks that this kid is pathetic. Helga reminded him that this guy plays a huge role in their plan and they need to use him as the heir of the Northern Heavenly clan as much as they can. Fire is blazing everywhere, clouds of acrid smoke are reaching towards the sky, and the demon of the primordial house is killing his next victim, piercing her chest with his hand. House a demon. Wilmer Rune was disappointed that these people did not even resist. Then a messenger in the skin of a wolf ran up to him. He greeted the gentleman and told him what happened to the gang of the hidden ghost. After transmitting the location of their targets, they awaited further instructions. Contact with them was lost because they were all killed. Wilmer was furious that his elite force, the hidden ghost gang, had been destroyed. But that wasn't all. The messenger whispered in the master's ear that they were all killed by some child, and this child must be in the same place as that girl. And this was a fortunate combination of circumstances. Wilmer shouted to his gang that they were going rabbit hunting. It was already morning when one of the arriving guests finally found his old friend, who had been avoiding him all the time. The elite tiger guard, Woody Wyatt from the 4 Deadly Heavens, was worried that his old friend had suddenly disappeared. He was worried about him, but he guessed that Aaron would be here. Aaron was angry that Woody was treating him like an old friend after stealing his woman, so he ironically advised the elite tiger guard to focus on his mission and not appear in front of him again. The man still felt guilty about what had happened, although he didn't think Aaron was still angry about it. And with undisguised satisfaction, he said that she herself chose him, and it was she who insisted on marriage. Furious and taking out his blade, Aaron shouted at Woody to shut his fucking mouth. The guard didn't think that his words would make Fall so angry. Aaron, about to kill his friend, shouted that he should not dare lie, she would never do that. Unsheathing his blade, Woody lunged at him, causing Fowl to freeze. His blade was broken into pieces, and there were wounds on his hand and forearm. With an instant change in his face, Woody said that he was just trying to be polite, and Aaron should finally accept reality. He'll be here for a while, so it won't be possible to avoid each other all the time, so it would be better if Aaron changed his position in life. Woody didn't hurt him too deeply, so before the wound gets worse, Fowl should go and clean up his act. Aaron remembered that they were both in love with the same woman. She was incredibly beautiful, but Woody was always behind. Until one moment everything changed and she left for him. Then Aaron's heart was broken into smithereens. The fact that he was left behind Woody again made Fowl laugh hysterically as he bled. King once again sat in his forge and made something. When he came home, Charlotte began to demand to feed her again. But this time the guy didn't even yell at her for her impudence. Placing a tray in front of her with the same food that he prepares every day, the girl winced in disgust. Then King, silently, handed her the metal flower that he had so diligently crafted in the forge. Charlotte was puzzled by his action, but the guy said it was just a gift. Charlotte still couldn't believe that King did this for her. The guy calmly added that he wanted to give her something before they parted ways. Touched, Charlotte decided not to bother King with her complaints about food. After dinner, sitting in her room, The girl could not stop admiring the iron flower given to her. She had never received gifts from anyone, so this pleasant feeling was new to her. While the girl was looking at her little happiness, Kai quietly crept into the room. Not expecting to see him today, Charlotte quickly hid the gift in her bosom. Kai appeared to inform the young mistress about the imminent arrival of the master to the clan. The girl's nervous behavior and what she was hiding could not escape the man's sharp gaze. Charlotte reassured the assistant, saying that this was not something to worry about. Kai reminded his mistress that she is the only and last hope. She must remember this, and therefore personal attachments will only get in the way. Charlotte, as if having come to her senses, firmly decided not to allow this to happen. Kai said out loud that he trusted the young mistress, but he thought to himself that something was wrong. Aaron Fall trained, swinging his blade angrily. He cursed Woody and couldn't believe that he was telling the truth, and if he was, then why did that girl leave him? He thought madly about himself, Woody, and that woman. What was it about him that Aaron didn't? Even though Woody was talented enough to join the elite guard squad of the Four Deadly Heavens, one of the great families of the Nine Heavens, and meanwhile he rots in this distant land. Foal had already learned the path of the blue heavenly sword, but he was still at the beginning level. Why couldn't he improve his level with his best efforts? Maybe this was his limit. With gnashing of teeth, he promised himself to kill them all, every single one. Suddenly, someone used the technique of dark illusions of a distrustful heart. A voice began to say that when he begins to doubt himself, darkness will swallow his heart. The rage that boils inside will only lead to collapse and will never solve his problems. This part he is looking at is only one of the few contained within him, and it does not define who he is as a whole. Aaron did not understand who was here, but some voice continued to echo. One day, when he calms the rage within himself, his thoughts will become crystal clear. They will be a mirror reflecting the truth. It is like water that can flow even in the lowest places. Illuminated by the sun, it will evaporate and rise into the atmosphere. Convictions in the heart, the same principle as here. Having become the atmosphere, the rising winds will begin to blow away the clouds, as will the doubts in his heart. Let him allow his meridians to become the sea and his navel ring to become the base. Let him align his cerebral cortex with the heavens and he will rule the heavens. Someone's technique helped the man come to his senses and bring his emotions under control. But he still did not understand what kind of chi it was and who helped him. It was as if someone had opened a door and directed him to the right path. But there was no one nearby. Aaron stood in the rain all alone. King, as usual, sat in his favorite place on the roof of the 10,000 Skies building. Having gone down and went out into the street, he was about to go to his room. But I just felt incredibly gigantic chi from someone. A guy was walking through the main gate of the clan. He was all wounded, but his aura was like a fierce dragon. King was surprised by such a strong flow of aura, and his legs were ready to give way at any second. He realized that this guy was definitely a martial artist. Meanwhile, the stranger walked slowly, looking at the well-known Northern Heavenly clan. Seeing King, the guy tensed and looked at him suspiciously, but he immediately relaxed when he noticed his brother, sister, Helga, and the general running towards him. The man was surprised that his older brother and younger sister arrived before him. Helga, seeing King standing nearby, greeted him with a slight tilt of her head. The guy answered the girl with the same slight tilt of his head. Alfie was worried when he came closer and noticed a bunch of wounds on his brother's body. With worry in her eyes, Helga theorized that Master Joe's wounds were inflicted by the last opponent of the 100-man challenge, Vincent Fance. His older brother offered to go and treat the wounds, but the guy assured that the man was a strong opponent, but not enough to hurt him. Alfie was curious to know which bastard was able to injure the rising star of the eastern sky, Salman Joe. It dawned on King that this guy was the third son of the Sacred Pillar, Gordon Joe, of the Central Heavenly Alliance. With a smug smile, Salman said that those people looked suspicious, but nothing more. He was the one who shook Murim's world. He looked after the departing king. They hastened to tell him that this is the heir of the Northern Heavenly clan. But there is no need to worry about him because he is pitiful. But Master Joe continued to look after the retreating owner of these places. From the excitement and such a powerful aura of Salman Joe, King's palms began to sweat. He didn't expect to meet him here. His aura is terrifying, and his chi power is on a completely different level. As King approached his room, General Ars blocked his way. They were still strangers, so he introduced himself as the general of the elite Tiger Guards from the Four Deadly Heavens, Green Clark, who had come to deliver a message to the young master. King was invited to dinner at Huachin Palace. The main character found it funny that the guests invited the owner of this territory, but still he agreed to attend dinner. The general added that the gentleman should come tomorrow evening with his cousin. It was already night when Salman was relaxing in the hot bath and thinking about young King T. He found it strange that this guy had no chi and no martial arts. But there was definitely something strange coming from him. Whether physically or spiritually, the strength and will of the Northern Heavenly Clan was inherited by him. When King walked to the forge, he noticed Salman sitting near the wall in the lotus position. He had been waiting for the owner of the clan since early morning. Having formally introduced himself, Mr. Joe showed respect for the guy. It was an honor for him to meet King. Not expecting such goodwill from Salman, the main character introduced himself in response. Master Joe came to express his gratitude for the young man accepting him into the residence without prior request. Salman had long wanted to visit the Northern Heavenly Clan, and King finally granted his wish, so he was very grateful for such kindness. The main character, Offset, said that there is not much to see here since the place turned into ruins, so he hopes that the guest will not be disappointed. Master Joe hastened to tell the guy that it doesn't matter to him what the clan looks like from the outside. The main thing is the opportunity to see the only heir to the will of the Northern Heavenly Clan with his own eyes. An awkward silence fell between the men after Salman's words. By evening, King and Charlotte, under the gaze of those present, proudly walked to dinner at the Watchan Palace. She went with the guy because she had a really bad feeling about it. Besides, the girl could smell something tasty, but she couldn't let King eat it all. Charlotte was tired of eating the same thing day after day, so she only went to dinner for the sake of hearty dishes. King couldn't stop this woman, so he just watched her condescendingly. When the young people opened the door of the dining hall, members of the 9-pillar families were already waiting for them. Charlotte immediately drew attention to Salman, who looked like a lion. Salman also paid attention to Cousin King, which he was not sure about. She had a very unusual chi, but in any case, she was definitely not an ordinary person. The man stood up from the table to greet Master Tai. He was glad that the guy still attended their dinner. In awkward silence, the young people sat down at the dinner table. Mistress Helga shook her head weakly in greeting. Ava waved to King and Charlotte with a wide smile. Alfie looked arrogantly at the guys and suggested getting straight to the point. Helga and Salman stood up from the table at the same time, the man apologizing for using the Huachin Palace and for such an unexpected invitation, and the woman adding that they wanted to give King their seal of approval. They want to found the Azure Dragon Society, the purpose of which will be to involve martial youth in politics so that their opinions will be taken into account by the Central Heavenly Alliance. Now there are only 3 of them here, but other martial masters have promised support. King was wondering why they were the only ones in the Northern Heavenly Clan now. Charlotte was completely engrossed in eating at this time, not paying attention to the negotiations. Helga replied that the older generation didn't like it when younger martial artists got together. Salman added with a smile that there is no one here who does not respect the Northern Sky Clan. Many have lived their lives honoring it. The history of opposing Silent Night for centuries is worthy of respect, which is why they want to establish organizations here. The message of this meeting will be the Azure Dragon Society's oath to the heavens, and so they want Master Tai to witness and give his seal of approval. From Charlotte's point of view, they wanted King's approval so that if something happened, he would take the blame. A bead of sweat ran down Helga's cheek from excitement because of the words of the guy's cousin. With confidence in his voice, King said he would witness their promise. As a sign of respect, Salman stood up and thanked Master T for the service he had rendered. For the rest of the evening, the young people did not talk anymore and only yawned boredly. Only Charlotte, through her strength, continued to fill her belly with food. It was already deep night, and people from the Mercenary gang were still standing guard far from the clan. They were very unhappy about this. They hoped that after those people arrived, they would have a chance to join the 4 deadly heavens, but they look at the gang members as shit. They were terribly hungry, and they were told to watch the area where even an ant could not crawl. The gang members hoped to feast on at least scraps of food, of which too much had been prepared. While they were discussing such injustice, a huge, threatening shadow grew behind them. Turning around, the men's eyes widened in surprise and horror. Aaron, while patrolling the area with his partner, noticed something strange in the rocks, but the second man did not hear anything. Then they heard a heartbreaking scream from the top of the rock, which soon died down. Aaron asked his partner who was located at the northwest entrance. He replied that Duke Rich and Cody Liu were there, who, moreover, did not answer the signal. The deputy captain rushed forward to find out the reason for this cry. His partner could not understand when the master became so good at martial arts. Puffing, the man climbed the mountain where Aaron stood motionless. The man's eyes widened at the sight before him. The remains of human limbs were scattered everywhere, and the whole earth was flooded with a sea of blood. The guy could not hold back vomiting. Aaron realized with horror that the remains belonged to Duke and Cody. At this time, dinner was in full swing. People were having small talk with each other. Charlotte, looking at all these people, whispered in King's ear that they looked like a bunch of idiots. The guy agreed with the girl but added that they looked like a scary bunch of idiots. Puffing with dissatisfaction, Charlotte advised the guy to stay close to her and then she would protect him. With a condescending smile, King looked at his ward and remained silent. Unexpectedly for the girl, King thanked Charlotte and agreed to her proposal. Turning away in embarrassment, she muttered that she would protect him until he left, not understanding why she even said this. Then Salman approached King, asking him to step aside for a second and discuss something. After the guys left, Helga approached Charlotte to ask how she liked the food. With a threatening look, Charlotte asked the girl when they would stop bothering King. Helga looked down at her interlocutor arrogantly. Jumping up from the table, Charlotte told the girl that there was no point in inviting King today. Helga replied that they needed his consent, but she apologizes for disturbing Master Tai. Without backing down, the cousin demanded that they simply leave him, because even without them, King's life was dull and miserable. Ava approached the girls and rudely said that Charlotte was the only one who burdened him even more. Besides, King did not object to their proposal, so let the cousin not interfere and know her place. Moreover, Charlotte is no different from them and brazenly takes advantage of his hospitality. Realizing that Ava was right, the girl looked away in confusion. Then all three girls turned to the window from which a loud roar came. A while earlier, the guys were standing on the balcony of the Huachin Palace. Master Joe was apologizing to King for suddenly asking for his consent, but he had one more request to Master T. He asked the main character to join the Azure Dragon Society to change this world together. But before he could hear the answer, a loud scream reached them. At the main gate of the Northern Heavenly Clan stood the Hausa demon, Wilmer Rune, who was looking for the baby. A gang of mercenaries, coughing up blood, tried to prevent this thug from passing on. Compared to them, Wilmer was twice as tall and looked like a huge stone cliff. At once, all the mercenaries attacked him, trying to prevent him from going deeper into the clan. By creating a rock hurricane, Wilmer instantly scattered his opponents. Then he noticed a bright point in the sky approaching him. She approached with lightning speed and hit the monster with a huge explosion, which created a flurry of stones. Wilmer was curious who was so impudent and dared to challenge him. It was Salman Joe. He couldn't let the monster cause chaos and disorder here. Wilmer burst into laughter because this kid used a fancy nickname, Rising Star of the Eastern Sky, and moreover, single-handedly dealt with his gang of hidden ghosts. The monster simply could not believe it. Salman remembered that the other day he dealt with those bastards who, it turns out, were from the same gang. Then, as he thought, they are not mainland martial artists. Master Joe suggested that these guys might be from the Silent Night organization. With a smug smile, Wilmer said that the guys' eyes were filled not with fear, but with anticipation of an imminent battle. They stood opposite each other in a fighting stance. At this time, all wounded, Woody reached his general. Due to the noise, there was a real commotion in the dining room. Everyone was wondering what the hell was happening outside. Trembling with fear, Charlotte realized that this monster had been pursuing her since the moment of their battle. Then King, who was completely calm, took her by the shoulder. Charlotte warned him that this was not the person King could handle, so he needed to get out of here as quickly as possible. Looking at the windows, behind which there were already people from the gang, King replied that it was too late to leave. People in wolf skins burst into the hall, causing general excitement. Alfie didn't understand how the elite tiger guards didn't take care of the intruders. Goldie Lag got into a fighting position to protect Helga, who was terrified by what was happening. She thought about the fact that these were most likely people from Silent Night, but that's why they appeared so suddenly after so many years of calm. The girl hoped that Master Joe could defeat them. Letting down her hair, Charlotte stood in front of King, ready to defend him if anything happened. With confidence, she prepared to use the Chaos Demon technique. At this time, a battle was about to break out on the street between the monster and Master Joe, the latter hoping that he would deal with him as quickly as he could. He spat and attacked his opponent at the speed of light. Squinting his eyes against the bright light, the demon realized that the guy was using the Light of Enlightenment. Hitting Wilmer in the chest, Salman shouted at him to accept the chance to receive the highest reward. When the monster flew away from a powerful blow, the guy was behind him and used Opening the Third Eye. To finally finish off the demon, Master Joe used the 3 successive bursts of light technique. Wilmer flew into a pile of stones. All his bones were broken, and he himself, it seemed, should already be dead. Salman, who did not receive a scratch, was pleased with the work done. This attack took more mental power from him than he thought. And when the chance comes, he must return the favor and find out more information about this demon. Then, behind the guy, cracks and pops were heard. The demon, who should have been dead, suddenly stood up. With an unnatural face, Wilmer praised the guy for trying to kill him. But this is not enough to defeat him. The moment he found himself in the air above the guy's head, the demon was about to strike back. Having created a real tornado, Wilmer used the technique of demonic dive of chaotic rotation. With a mocking tone, he told the guy, who was already lying at his feet covered in blood, that he was not on top of this world after defeating some masters who were greedy for glory, but seeing the potential in Salman, Wilmer was ready to let him live. He added that the guy would find him when he became stronger. Only then would Master Joe's death be fun for him. About to move on, the demon looked at Salman, who took his hand, thereby holding him. Wilmer is furious at the impudence of this piece of shit, who refuses to give up and, moreover, refuses his mercy. The demon was ready to tear him to pieces when a voice stopped him. He turned towards the voice, not understanding how some girl dared to disturb him. In front of him stood Ava, who was 3 times his size. The tiger guards and his family were already rushing to help Salman. Alfie was horrified when he saw his little sister standing next to the monster. Ava began to tell the demon that her father was one of the 9 heavens of the Central Heavenly Alliance, and if Wilmer did not stop, he would come and kill him. But before she had time to finish this, the demon tore her apart with one wave of his hand. Helga covered her mouth with her hands in horror at what she saw. Alfie, looking up from the fight, screamed with tears in his eyes. His little sister exploded. Out of anger and grief, he rushed towards him from the balcony of the palace at the speed of light. General Greg tried to stop the young master from a rash act, but it was too late. Determined to take revenge on the demon, Alfie used the Crimson King's demon hand technique. But with one wave of his hand, Wilmer swept him out of his way with the words that this place is filled with only useless small fry. From the palace, King watched all this with undisguised horror. Charlotte yanked him to the side like a rag doll, screaming to keep him behind her at all times. Along the way, the girl dealt with her opponents over and over again. Helga was beside herself with what she saw, not paying attention to the mess unfolding around her. Her plans did not include the death of her younger sister. She did not understand who this monster was and why he was attacking them. Maybe King T was behind this attack. Although he did not look like a member of their group, the girl inspired herself that she needed to calm down and that, more importantly, find out more information regarding Silent Night. She asked Leg to move to another location because things weren't looking good right now. With undisguised cruelty, Helga told her that they should take only Master Salman and Master Alfie and get out of here. The rest can be abandoned here. King, hearing the girl's words, looked at her with condemnation in his eyes. Helga caught a glimpse of the guy's indifferent gaze and felt awkward for a second. So she quickly turned away from the young man. Leaving everyone to their fate, the girls ran out of the room. General Greg cut off the path of the gang, which was already rushing after them. Wilmer, seeing the girls running out, slowly moved towards them, leaving the dying Alfie behind him. For Helga and the others, no matter how they wanted to use King, his value was immeasurable in their plan. The girl regretted that they had to leave the guy here, but she must return to the mainland and prepare a new plan. But now her main task was to make sure that no one knew about Master Salman's defeat today. So she used the Heavenly Illusion Enveloping Fate technique. King stood on the balcony and watched as Helga put her technique into action. He was surprised that she could spread her spiritual energy without the use of aids, so it could definitely be said that she was a member of the Great Rand family. When the demon fell into illusion, such an unusual technique seemed interesting to him. Having grabbed the 2 wounded brothers, the girls hurried to get away from the clan as quickly as possible, because the illusion would not hold the monster for long. The tiger guards knew that they were thrown here to certain death, but they still did everything they could to gain some time. According to King, they died a dog's death chasing fame and recognition from those who would never acknowledge their death. During this time, Charlotte killed the last member of the Wolf Gang. Having emerged from Helga's illusion, Wilmer roared furiously, causing the guys to freeze in place. He demanded that the bastards finish their tricks. Realizing that everyone had escaped, the monster shouted after them to come back when they became stronger. In any case, he doesn't need them, because his original goal is Charlotte. Turning to the girl, Wilmer said with a smile that he was really looking forward to their meeting. Focusing on the unkillable Hausa demon, Charlotte quietly told King to get out of here. With anticipation, the demon shouted that since she was the only hope of that woman, he must kill her. But will this be enough to shake the heart of this witch and let Charlotte blame her death on the one who doomed her to such a fate? Having completed his monologue, Wilmer attacked the Huachin Palace. From such a powerful attack, King lost consciousness for a minute. And when he woke up, he saw a woman hovering above him. King realized that it was the White Night Witch. A long time ago, inside Silent Night, there was a ruler of the night who had absolute authority. Even the 4 demon lords supported him. They were known as the Hurricane of Darkness, Dark Gods of the Spear. They were the trusted men of the ruler of the night and used their enormous power in his place. The terror and destruction caused by these 4 were so enormous that even speaking their names was forbidden. Their strength was the same as the 9 heavens from the Central Heavenly Alliance, if not more, as King thought. Charlotte turned out to be not so simple, but he never expected that she would be the heir of the White Night Witch. At this time, the girl used the Will of the Silver Spirit technique. Wilmer was somewhat surprised that the girl did not run away from him like last time. Turning to King, Charlotte said that she could not hold the demon for too long, so he needed to escape as soon as possible. Not seeing King anywhere, the girl was glad that he managed to escape. After a short fight, the wounded Charlotte was in Wilmer's arms. It seemed funny and stupid to him that she was sacrificing herself for the sake of that boy who had left her without a second thought. Already on the verge of death, the girl remembered the joyful time she spent with King. He was the only person who showed her love. Mentally, she said goodbye to the guy, thanking him for everything he had done for her. When suddenly the demon released her from his tight grip. Ready to say goodbye to life, the girl opened her eyes and saw that someone had cut the monster's hand. King, who miscalculated the timing while running for his blade, came to Charlotte's defense. Wilmer could not understand who this guy was standing in front of him and what had just happened. King introduced himself as the leader of the 5th generation of the Northern Heavenly Clan, King T. Charlotte did not expect that a guy would come to her defense without any abilities. King looked at her out of the corner of his eye and told her not to go far and stay behind him. With confidence, the young man pointed his blade towards the demon and took a fighting stance. The demon did not understand what technique the guy was using and, most importantly, his wounds could not be healed, although his body was immortal. Not imagining that King would be fighting in a real fight so soon against such a strong opponent, he was worried about whether he would be able to use his power correctly. The QE emanating from the guy greatly disturbed the demon, so he definitely had to get rid of him. With enormous power, he was going to finish this brat off with one blow, but King managed to dodge the demon's fatal blow at the last moment. Wilmer couldn't imagine anyone being able to dodge this. With frenzy, the demon was about to strike again, this time the last. But this time too, King successfully dodged the enemy's blow. The monster again and again and again struck one blow after another, but the guy escaped from everyone unharmed. Unhinged with anger, Wilmer roared, calling King a fucking bastard. At this time, the deputy captain, Aaron Fall, was already rushing to help. He checked all patrolled areas, but all the guards were incapacitated. He knew that he shouldn't have come to this godforsaken place. All surviving comrades hurried to get away as quickly as possible in order to survive. Aaron didn't understand what the hell was going on here, and rushing back to the clan, he noticed a man hiding. It was the gang leader who, trembling with fear, sat and waited for all this to end. The deputy captain asked him what was going on here. The fat man replied that some bastard had come and started fighting them, so he advised Aaron to get out of here before he was killed along with the others. Foal wanted to reason with the captain, saying that their comrades were killed there, and at least they need to avenge the dead. But Greg was adamant he did not want to give his life for others. Aaron shouted that these guys were loyal warriors who trusted him. They gave their lives for someone like Greg, and he, at least as a leader, should honor their respect for him. Greg replied that this had nothing to do with him, and he could take revenge for the soldiers later. Now the main thing was for them to survive. After these words, Fowl kicked the captain with a flourish. As he left, he said to Greg, who was lying around, that as a person he was trash and nothing more. The fat man shouted in the back of the retreating deputy that he was too arrogant, and if he wanted to die, then let him dare, and Greg would do everything to survive. Approaching the Northern Sky Clan, Aaron promised himself to survive and crush all the bastards who looked down on him. He would return the favor to them all. At this time, the fight between King and Wilmer continued, which Charlotte watched with excitement. She couldn't believe that this guy who knew martial arts well was the king she knew. It turns out that he was hiding his abilities from her all this time. But even now, she can't sense his chi. What kind of martial arts did he learn? Wilmer was about to launch another deadly attack, from which King did not know how to hide. The monster was about to completely erase the guy's existence using the chaotic rain of destruction technique. Huge destructive bombs flew directly at King from above. Even if he can sense the entire area, he doesn't know exactly how to dodge all these attacks. Arriving at the battle site, Aaron was shocked by some crap that was flying to the ground. He noticed that all the buildings had been destroyed, and now this place was no different from the battlefield. And it was in this place that the Huachan Palace was located, in which the meeting was held. While skirting huge blocks of stones, the man heard someone's quiet groan. Woody lay bleeding behind one of the boulders. Aaron immediately flew up to his old friend, catching his head in his hands. He yelled at Woody not to dare die because then he wouldn't be able to do anything about the anger inside him. The wounded man, without answering his friend, quietly closed his eyes and fell silent. Aaron felt sorry for his comrade. He did not want him to die such a death. At this time, King was confused with fear for his life and for the life of Charlotte. Turning to the girl, he thought that first he needed to take her to a safe place. The girl was just sitting next to the shadow wall on which the symbols began to glow. The guy realized that he was learning the shadow sword technique, with which you can kill both god and demon. Taking advantage of the opportunity, King used the shadow sword of the end technique, waves of devastation. Amid the deafening explosions, Aaron closed the eyes of his dead old friend. He took Woody's sword, which he had used to wound him. Looking at the battlefield, the man's eyes bulged in surprise because he saw King fighting at the epicenter of everything. He didn't understand how this guy, who didn't know any fighting techniques, was now literally fighting like a shadow. And not far away sat the wounded Charlotte, who tried to cover herself from the stones hitting her. King, like a beast, fought for her and his safety and life in general. Time after time he delivered powerful attacks with his blade. Aaron was in complete shock at the rage and power of this young guy. Vilmer was beside himself with anger that this kid could resist him. Gathering all the rage into his blade, King was about to deliver the final killing blow. Taking off above the ground, at the speed of light he rushed towards the perplexed monster. Already without a trace of fear for his life, he raised the blade to strike. Wilmer stared in fear at King, who was about to finish him off without delay. He realized that in another second he would be killed, cut in half. This guy turned out to be not so simple. If you pull out a wolf's fangs, he will still remain a wolf. Like lightning, King approached the monster, wanting to finish it off as quickly as possible. The guy with a devastated look lunged with a blade in his direction. But Wilmer did not want to die so easily, and therefore overtook his opponent first. He was infuriated by the guy's strange techniques that he had learned somewhere. The main character still managed to touch the monster's shoulder, which began to bleed. He didn't understand when that bastard managed to hurt him. There was no living space on King. He was reclining on the ground, coughing up blood. He can't even breathe normally, having almost reached his limits, and now he doesn't know what to do next. Due to the undying fires of chaos, the demon's body is close to immortality, but now his wounds cannot be healed. Looking at King, the demon told him that he was not like the other kids. What kind of martial arts did this bastard learn? Wilmer only enjoys those battles where the enemy can pose a threat to his life. And since King can kill him, the monster wants to finish him off as quickly as possible. Drawing the demon's attention to herself, Charlotte launched a volley of attacks at his face. The girl was too used to the guy, so she didn't want him to die. Wilmer, of course, didn't like this. He looked at the girl with hatred. And the next second, he angrily threw a charge of energy at her so that the wall behind her collapsed. To the demon, her attempt to stop him looked like she wanted him to kill her. Distraught that Charlotte was dead, King shouted her name. Wilmer was about to crush the guy with one foot, when suddenly he was completely covered by someone's wave attack. King lay in a pile of stones and screamed in pain. He also came under attack. Charlotte remained safe and sound because Kai protected her in time. The girl did not expect to see him here and at the same time was very glad to see him. Vilmer, still alive, was lying in a pile of cobblestones. He expected the woman who attacked him to come here sooner or later. This is Bala, Witch of the White Night, the demon lord of Silent Night, Kayla Zine. The woman looked at Charlotte to make sure she was okay. The girl, in turn, looked sadly and confusedly back at the master. Turning to the demon of chaos, she said that he should not have been born. Wilmer told her that the people from Silent Night were the ones who created him and gave him life. Turning to Charlotte, Kai apologized for his late arrival. Finding King's gaze, Kai thought that the young mistress needs to surpass the 5 worldly desires and 7 human emotions. But because of this guy, Charlotte begins to develop her emotions, and this ruins everything. The most dangerous people in Muram's world are bastards like him who hide their skills from others. Not to mention that he is the sworn enemy of Silent Night. He is the future leader of the Northern Heavenly Clan. Everyone thought that this clan was completely destroyed, but that is no longer the case. This guy was a ferocious beast who hid his claws. Therefore, he must be killed here and now. He was too much of a threat for them. So Kai formed a shadow blade from his hand to finish King off. But as soon as he moved towards the guy, Charlotte grabbed his clothes with her hand. With a plea in her eyes, she asked not to kill him. Kai did not even know how to react to her request. When the man took her in his arms, she said that King was not to blame for anything. It was all her fault. She came and hid here without his permission, and he showed mercy, without demanding anything in return. This was the first time in her life when she received so much attention and kindness from someone. Kai, trying to reason with his mistress, said that he was a furious beast who hid his fangs and was therefore a great threat to them. But before he could finish speaking, Charlotte, still holding him by his clothes, quietly whispered that King was the one who saved her from death. Accepting the girl's decision, Kai turned away indignantly. But he immediately handed the lady the Divine Restoration Pill, a miraculous remedy for healing wounds. Charlotte looked first at the pill Kai held out, and then at the barely alive King. The guy lay among the rubble of stones, covered in blood and wounds. At this time, there was a life-and-death struggle between the witch and the demon, and deafening explosions were heard. Wilmer could no longer fully resist as he had a few hours ago. After that guy's strange chi attacks, his wounds are not healed, which prevents him from fighting at full strength. Staring murderously at the monster, the witch said that the only reason for his success last time was her weakened defense due to his cowardly ambush. But under normal conditions, the pathetic Kevil Mara, who uses undying fire of chaos, is useless against Kayla. In this case, he will not lose twice. The witch, having finished her monologue, used the moonlight rotation technique. The monster was created for the sole purpose of hunting people like Kayla. Grinning ominously, the great demon of chaos, Vilmer, attacked the White Witch. With a crazed expression on his face, he laughed in the woman's face. Seeing that something terrible could happen now, Kai, worried about the young mistress, covered her with himself. Opening his eyes after losing consciousness, the first thing King saw was Kayla's look of contempt directed at him. All wounded and covered in blood, he lay motionless in the stones. The witch looked at him from top to bottom, standing almost close to the guy. Finally waking up, out of fear, ignoring the pain, King pressed himself into the cobblestones behind him. Looking around, he realized that that demon had disappeared somewhere. The well-known northern clan was now no different from the battlefield. Turning to King, Kayla suggested that he was probably the last blood heir of the northern heavenly clan. Looking at the guy, she thought that he was perceived as a tiger cub without fangs. But it turns out that not only are his fangs intact, but he is also a full-fledged tiger. This boy is a great tiger with deadly fangs, ready to fight. This is a sprout that may grow sooner or later, so it is better to uproot it immediately. The witch was about to kill King, but she was stopped by the voice of Charlotte approaching them. Turning towards the voice, the woman saw the girl, barely moving her legs, hobbling towards them. Standing in front of the guy, thereby protecting him, Charlotte looked pleadingly at her master. Realizing the student's intentions, Kayla demanded that she leave and not stop her, because this guy was the heir of the Northern Heavenly Clan and their sworn enemy. Charlotte countered that King was the one who saved her from certain death and the one to whom she was indebted. With tears in her eyes, she prayed that the woman would not touch her savior. Charlotte would obey and follow all the witch's instructions without question. But this would not be the first and last request. Kayla didn't think that her Charlotte would ever ask her for such a request. This boy changed her student, so he definitely needs to be eliminated. But before she had time to say a word, the girl, sincerely begging her not to touch King, fell to her knees in front of her. King didn't expect Charlotte to be on her knees begging for his life. Kai just silently closed his eyes from the unacceptable behavior of the young mistress. Kayla was silent for a long time and looked at the girl at her feet. She remembered something from the distant past, how her mentor turned away from her when she tearfully begged her. Brushing aside the flood of memories and emotions, the woman closed her eyes for a second. Kayla agreed to the student's request, but she had a condition. Charlotte will have to learn the finishing technique of Silver Light Ice Crystal. Kaini expected that the time had already come, and the master, who was hesitant to teach this technique due to the high risk, finally decided to speed up the finishing process of the Will of the Silver Spirit. I didn't expect such a condition from Kayla. Charlotte, after a short silence without lifting her forehead from the ground, finally agreed. She stood up and walked over to King, handing him a healing pill. Having swallowed it, the guy whispered that he was very ashamed to show such a part of himself. The girl responded to his words with only the tightest hug she was capable of. The young man, who did not expect such sincere hugs after everything that had happened, burst into tears. Through tears, Charlotte said she needed to go home. Hiding the tears streaming down his cheeks, King agreed with the girl with a sad smile. Two young people, who had become very attached to each other, sat among the former battlefield. They knew that this would be their last meeting. After a touching farewell, King, devastated, leaned on a stone, losing his last drops of strength. As she was leaving, Kayla said over her shoulder that the heir of the Northern Heavenly Clan should not appear in front of Charlotte a second time. Otherwise, no one would help him. When they disappeared from sight, the guy dropped his hand on the cold ground from powerlessness. He swore to the heavens that he would definitely become stronger to show them all. Aaron watched all the unfolding events from behind the stone. Covering his mouth with his hand, he was afraid to make a sound. The man, of course, suspected that this guy was unusual, but so strong. King's attacks and his murderous gaze sent a chill down the man's spine. Aaron couldn't believe that this boy had learned to use a sword at such a high level. As a result, the will and spirit of the Northern Heavenly Clan were inherited by King T. And who would have thought that all these years he had been hiding such power within himself? Suddenly, Aaron remembered someone's instructions when he was in a broken state and was about to break into small pieces. He realized that the one who enlightened him at that turning point was none other than King. But why would this guy do this for the man who participated in his torment? Away from his thoughts, Aaron noticed that King had finally gotten up and was heading somewhere. He was interested in where he was going and would like to know his future plans. The main character had long noticed that he was being watched, so he told him that if the man was planning to kill him, then now is the right time. Startled by his sudden location, Aaron did not know how to respond, so he nervously looked away. Without waiting for an answer, King wandered on, not paying any more attention to the hiding man. Aaron just silently looked after the guy walking away somewhere. It had been several days since the man shook off the dust on him. Taking off his protective mask so as not to breathe in all this dirt, he tiredly wiped the sweat from his forehead. During these days, Aaron collected all the remains of his comrades and enemies, along with dry sticks and branches. The next minute, he had already set fire to the makeshift grave, and a huge column of smoke and fire soared into the sky. The man continued to stand and look at the fire, clutching the blade of his dead friend in his hands. Aaron raised his head to the sky and sighed heavily from everything he had experienced that day. The sun was already approaching sunset when King emerged from the rubble of the once majestic building. Not paying any attention to Aaron sitting nearby, the guy wandered off, holding onto the stones, somewhere to the side. The man was glad that King was at least alive and finally came out 5 days later, but he was still wondering what the young man was going to do. Without answering his question, the guy walked up to a stone and was about to pick it up. Aaron made another attempt to talk to the boy, asking what he was looking for there. But King left this question unanswered, continuing to do his job. Finally, having found what he was looking for, the guy picked up a stone from the ground. Aaron did not understand why it was so important to him. Wrapping the stone in a white cloth and throwing it over his shoulder, he exhaled tiredly. King went straight to Aaron, who was sitting to the side. The man immediately realized that it was time for the guy to leave this place, so he stood up to say goodbye to him. He thought that soon the Central Heavenly Alliance would send people to investigate this incident. They would learn about the existence of that monster and the appearance of Silent Night, and they would also learn about the case with King. The guy also thought about the fact that the Central Heavenly Alliance would not leave this so easily. And even if he was not directly involved in this, he was still somehow connected. Emerging from his thoughts, King asked the man what he was going to do. Aaron replied that he needed to return to the Central Heavenly Alliance because he still had work there. King thought this decision was reckless, because when he left this place, he would become the only survivor. They would try to extract as much information as possible from the deputy, and he would face great difficulties. Realizing that the guy was 100% right, the man agreed with him. He swore with his life before the gods that he would not tell them that King had survived. Hesitating a bit, Aaron also apologized for his actions in the past. He sincerely respected King's ancestors and was very disappointed when he saw that pathetic part of the guy. So the man could not accept the fact that he was the heir of this clan. Sighing, King agreed that anyone in Aaron's position would have felt the same. The man thanked the guy for accepting the apology and did not forget to thank him for those instructions. King sheepishly replied that it was not difficult at all. There was an awkward silence between the men as Aaron was amazed at King's abilities. The next second, he fell to his knees, saying that from now on he would serve Master Teacock as a student. He swore before all the gods in heavens that he would live and die for the Master, and henceforth, King would be his only mentor. Aaron realized for himself that the Northern Sky clan will be resurrected by King. In an era where conspiracies and betrayals are widespread, no one will find such a person whose spirit is righteous and driven by an unbending will. And if such a person as him cannot be his master, then no one can. The man loudly asked his lord for his recognition. He would become King's sword and crush any of his enemies. The guy quietly asked his newly made student to get up from his knees. Without any hesitation, Aaron jumped up from the ground. With his hand on the man's shoulder, King said he heard his desire and accepted it. From now on, Fowl will be his first blade. Later, the three men stood and watched as the once majestic Northern Sky clan burned down. In the place with the clan, the secret writings on the walls, which were once reflected as a shadow on the ground, will also burn. King was sad most of all because now not only the clan was burning, but also his house in which he had lived his whole life. Tears welled up in old Marl's eyes. He will never forget that this was once the only place where he was accepted. Unable to bear this sight, the old man turned away, hiding his sadness. Earlier, having learned about the massacre in the northern clan, Marl hurried with all his might to the young master. All the way he was afraid for the guy and prayed that he would be okay. Marl hoped that King was alive after everything that happened. He heard from someone that the heir of the 9 heavens had come to the northern heavenly clan. Their arrogance knows no bounds. Marl did not understand how they even dared to come here. The old man was worried that King was seriously injured and apologized for a long time for not being able to arrive earlier. King was glad that Mr. Marl was worried about him, but hastened to reassure him, saying that he was fine. The guy was already grateful that he had arrived here to him. Marl was too moved by the words of his young master. While King climbed onto the horse, his mentor lamented that the northern clan was now in a very deplorable state. All this time, Aaron watched the two silently. Marl was not surprised when he learned that the young master already knew martial arts. Aaron approached King, who was sitting on horseback, to say goodbye to him and tell him to take care of himself until their next meeting. But the guy didn't even know how long his absence would take. For the man, time did not matter. He was ready to wait for his master as long as he wanted. King wanted Aaron to take care of himself while he was away. The man rushed to tell King not to worry about him. Everything changed from the moment Aaron gave the pathetic boy a rag to bandage his wounded finger. Now he has a mentor in front of him, whom he honors and respects and will serve him as long as necessary. Before sending the men on their way, Aaron asked Mr. Marl to take care of Kings. But Marl has been doing this for many years, so Foal doesn't have to worry about it. After saying goodbye, they set off. Aaron, watching the rapidly retreating backs, thought that the dragon had left his home to grow his own wings. A man, at all costs, must wait for the master's return and prepare for his future. This will be his first assignment as an apprentice. Morning came when a large army appeared on the horizon, rapidly approaching the former clan. All this time, Aaron was waiting for them, sitting in front of the main entrance. Since they finally came, then Master Alfie and Lady Helga must have arrived at the western fortress of the Central Heavenly Alliance. The arriving soldiers stopped right in front of Aaron, who was already getting up from the cold ground. Turning to the man, the main one said in a deep voice that Silent Night had been seen here, and he also demanded that the stranger identify himself. Aaron realized that he was Livius IV, the general of the Western Fortress. Taking out his pass, Fall identified himself and said that he was a warrior of the 3rd Mercenary Group, which was sent here by the Central Heavenly Alliance. The general asked Aaron where the rest of the mercenary group had gone. The man replied that he was the only survivor of the attack. When the general asked what happened to the heir of the Northern Heavenly Clan, the man replied that he was most likely dead. Still not believing the mercenary's words, Livius asked if he had seen King's death with his own eyes. Foal replied that the last time he saw him was locked in a burning room. However, he did not know whether he managed to survive or not. The general looked at Aaron incredulously. He still did not fully believe his words. Turning to his soldiers, he ordered them to arrest the mercenary for further interrogation in the Western Fortress. Then they will be divided into 2 groups. Kurt Don will be the leader of the first group, and Lonroft will be the leader of the second. The soldiers agreed with their general without question. Kurt Don must take his people and ensure the security of the borders, and Lon will take his people and thoroughly search everything around, recover all the burnt bodies. As the general's men tied up Aaron, he considered that when he arrived at the Western Fortress, they would interrogate him about Silent Night and how he survived, and they would also want to know everything about King if he could prove his innocence. Then he will join the Central Heavenly Alliance, and if not, he will be imprisoned forever. To wait for King's return, he must be completely focused. General Leo shouted for his men not to miss any clues related to Silent Night. No matter how hard they search, they will still find nothing, Aaron thought. The man did everything he could. The rest will depend on his young master, and he will pray for King's success. When Aaron was taken away, people moved in a crowd to search every nook and cranny of the clan that had burned to the ground. Several days have passed since King and Marl were on the road. Having reached the abandoned rocks, known as the Sinister Mountains, Marl said that this place was not at all intended for habitation. He couldn't believe that the young master actually decided to stay here. But since King will only be busy with training starting today, this place is perfect for him. Now for the whole world he will be dead. At first they will have doubts, but soon they will disappear. Because people in this world are too cruel and heartless. When leaving, Marl promised that he would bring food and supplies every 4 months. Taking the old man's hand, King thanked him for everything he had done for him. The man had gone through a lot because of the guy. Marl hastened to say that taking care of King is his sacred duty, which must be fulfilled. Having heard the words of his mentor, the young man, knowing that it would be selfish, asked to take care of him further. The man asked King not to worry about him, because now the guy must fully concentrate on training. Turning to the ominous rocks, King said that his path to the top begins here, the White Dragon Trade Association. One of the 10 great trade associations in the country, the strength of their fortune will make even the imperial family listen to their demands. They have countless branches throughout the mainland and have a gigantic influence in the entire country. Each branch is so large that it can operate independently. If they had a place that needed to be called the main headquarters, then it should be located in Nanju, the Arcadia district. They have an entire city under their control there. Inside Nanju, everyone knows about the White Dragon Trade Association, and it is almost impossible to find anyone who is not related to them. Tara Tai, the woman who founded the White Dragon Trade Association, is now retired, but this is the first time she has appeared at the Supreme Meeting in many years. All members of the association, led by Tara, were sitting at the table. Her youngest daughter is Paula Ayres, who has done everything she can since childhood to help her mother start a trade association. The eldest son is Corey Ayres. He is the one who cares about the White Dragon Trade Association more than anyone, and this person is the one whom Paula's mother entrusted with her brainchild. It had been a long time since the last time their mother appeared at the Supreme Meeting. This is quite unusual, which means something serious has happened. The first thing Taratai did was to clarify whether the situation in Unnam was really dire, to which her eldest son agreed. Paula had no idea that the council was called because of the situation in Unnam 7 years ago, when everyone wanted to leave Unnam because it was too far away to govern properly. The man who staked everything to form the foundation in Unnam was none other than Tara's third son, Loy Eris. Suddenly, Loy jumped up from his seat, shouting to his mother that if there were problems in Unnam, then he was the only one who should solve them. But Leo objected to his brother's proposal, saying that if he left his post here to go to Unnam, then they would suffer great losses, so it was better to send someone else there. Loy stood his ground. He wanted to go there because no one knows Unnam better than him, so they are obliged to send him there. Leo understood how his brother felt. He also knew that he was the only one most suitable for this. However, it is unknown how difficult the situation there is or how dangerous it is, so Leo cannot afford to send his own blood to such a place. But while their mother is here, to ensure that the decisions made are unbiased, he must refrain from using weather words. The council began to select candidates to send to Unnam. They proposed the leader of the family because he is quite smart and his decision-making skills are excellent. And the elder brother, Loy, and the master of 1,000. He is talented in martial arts, but, unfortunately, stupid. After listening to the advice of the council, Tara turned to her third son. People immediately fell silent, and silence reigned in the hall, and Loy immediately answered his mother. Tara asked if he really wanted to go to Unnam. Loy, without a doubt, gave his mother a positive answer, because he is the only one who is suitable for this. It was natural for Tara that her son wanted to go, but she needed to know who he would take with him. Loy planned to take the deputy general and his people with him. He was sure that together they would cope with any difficulties. The woman heard her son and asked him to take his bodyguard Marl with him. Loy was surprised that his mother asked to take this man with her. Tara rushed to convince her son that Marl was trustworthy, and that in an emergency, Loy could use him to contact them. The woman also wished her son to take care of himself, because the situation in Unnam is not simple. After the meeting ended, only Tara and Leo remained in the hall. They were worried that Loy did not have accurate information about the situation in Unnam. However, just because it is dangerous does not mean that the main family should not be involved in it. If they lose their core, then no one will respect the White Dragon Trade Association. In times like these, it is their initiative to take matters into their own hands and set an example for others. Tara had a feeling that her eldest son would be up to the task. After their conversation, the woman asked Leo to send her bodyguard Marl. The man only meekly agreed with his mother. Moving away from the palace, Leo thought that the bodyguard Marl was not at all talented in martial arts and did not stand out among others. The man doesn't know what he did to earn his mother's trust. Stopping in front of the training ground, Leo began to look for the bodyguard with his eyes. Marl was just training the boy, scolding him for not putting more strength into his shoulders, The guy should stop focusing on the internal flow of his chi. Now it is more important that he understands how to use the internal and physical state at the same time. Due to the fact that the guy never succeeded, Marl scolded him even more. Stopping behind the sitting man, Leo addressed him. Turning around, Marl did not expect to see the leader of the family here. According to Leo's instructions, Marl came to the meeting room with Tara Tai. The woman invited the man to sit down and also asked how things were going with him, to which Marl replied that thanks to the boundless kindness of Mrs. Tai, his life was easy and comfortable. The woman was pleased to hear this. She was grateful that the man was here, but Marlia was wondering why Mrs. Tai called him. Tara replied that her third son wished to go to Unam because it was the place he founded and he considered it his responsibility to resolve the situation there. Therefore, she asked the bodyguard Marl to accompany him on the journey. 7 years ago, her eldest son Reen escaped mortal danger. Then 5 years ago, she found herself in critical conditions, but miraculously survived. Looking at the past now, the person who helped them get through all this was Marl. Tara believes that a man has been blessed with great luck and has the power to help people get out of difficult situations. She firmly believes that having good luck is a talent gifted by the gods, which is why a woman would want to trust Marley. The man was in a hurry somewhere because in half a month they were leaving for Unam. In any case, that little brat, Levi must accompany them on this trip and he will end up with a sword in his chest, so he needs to be trained more brutally to prevent this from happening. Continuing on his way, Marl noticed a destroyed cart, which was most likely robbed by bandits. Due to their heavy influx, Marl had heard that the place had begun to be ruled by the Imperial Army. But interestingly enough, he had often passed through this area without ever running into bandits. Marl apparently is really lucky. It is not surprising that Madame Tara sent him with her son. At this time, King was walking to his makeshift house in the rock, in which he had lived for 7 years, having collected a decent armful of firewood to light the stove. Due to daily grueling training, scars appeared on the guy's body. So many blades that he forged with his own hands were broken. Then, from behind the door, someone called the young gentleman with an enthusiastic cry. Immediately recognizing Marl's voice, King turned to the door with a smile. The guy rushed out into the street, where his mentor, who had just arrived, was already waiting for him. King missed him very much. Marl saw the guy no more than a year ago, but he already looks like a different person. Even if Marl dies today, he will not have any regrets because he finally saw King. Having embraced his mentor, King did not understand why he had come all this way at this time of year. But in any case, the guy is grateful to him for everything he does for him. After a warm greeting, King invited Marl to come into the house. Sitting in the house, Marl could not believe that King had changed so much since last summer. The guy denied it, saying that he needed to train even harder. Having sipped from a mug of hot tea, Marl continued to admire the young man. For him, he was incredible, and the phrase, "New day, new man," truly suits the young master. Every time he sees him, King appears as a completely new person. He has become someone whom Marley can no longer comprehend. The main character noticed that the mentor arrived earlier than he expected, to which the man replied that he arrived earlier because he was urgently sent to Unam. King was worried about his mentor. He hoped that something serious didn't happen. Marl doubted that it was dangerous. Besides, if something bad happened, he was more than capable of protecting himself, so the young master shouldn't worry about him. Interrupting the conversation, the man asked what kind of sword it was in the next room. King hastened to answer that he forged this sword from a meteorite that his mentor gave him in the past. As expected, this stone was unusual. It took the guy several years to master it, but this sword gives off a rather ominous aura. Moving away from the conversation about the blade, King wanted to know more about what was going on in the world, Marl thought, and replied that after the incident 7 years ago, the politics of the world began to change. The 4 pillars of the northern heavens began to have more power in the world, and the Central Heavenly Alliance is trying to contain them. King suggested that since they are having internal wars, it means that Silent Night has not yet appeared. Marley agreed, saying that after that day they again hid from everyone. Because of this, even the Central Heavenly. The Alliance is confused. After spending the night in the young master's house, Marl got ready to leave in the morning. King asked him to take care of himself. The man hastened to reassure the guy, saying that until the world again sees the glory of the Northern Heavenly Clan, Marl will never get sick or fall. When leaving, the man said that he would return within 3 months in the spring, so King needed to take care of himself until then. The guy was more worried not about himself, but about his mentor, who was going to resolve a difficult situation in Unam. Having said goodbye to King, Marl set off on his way back. The guy remained standing in place, looking after the retreating mentor. Raising his head to the sky, King, not for the first time, remembered Charlotte, whom he had last seen 7 years ago. 3 months have already passed and spring has come. Mr. Marl said that he would arrive within 3 months. 2 more months passed and summer arrived, and he still had not arrived, King mentally apologizing to him for his excessive self-confidence. Marl is a person who will never break his promise. Now King is sure that something must have happened to him. Taking his sword in his hands, the guy descended from the top of the cliff. Angrily, he began to train for the umpteenth time, worrying about his mentor. Now the guy's strength could make everyone jump, and even the strongest stones were destroyed by his blade. He no longer needs to wait. He must go in search of Marl himself. Nanju, Arcadia District. In the tavern behind the counter, the owner of the establishment was sleeping peacefully. Suddenly, someone in a cloak that completely hid his appearance entered the establishment. Stretching sleepily, the owner greeted the long-awaited guest. Seeing that he looked like a beggar, the man thought of driving him away from here. Then the guest threw a bunch of gold coins on the table, causing the owner's eyes to sparkle greedily. He immediately changed his face, inviting the guest to the Crescent Tavern. He was ready to allocate him the best room. Even noble families and the White Dragon Trade Association visited it. There is also a comfortable bath there. Entering his room, the guy thought that he had spent too much time in isolation, so he only had a vague idea of a map of the area. King was even surprised that he was able to reach Nanju. It took him 10 days to get here. It was not easy, but it was only his fault because of his great self-confidence. King has no idea how he will look for Marlia. He only knows that his mentor worked in the White Dragon Trade Association. The guy really doesn't know much about the world. There's no point in justifying it by saying that he was too focused on studying martial arts, that he didn't have time to go searching earlier. The guy really hoped that Marl was still alive. Finding his way to the trade association, King stood in front of the main gate. The guards did not like it, especially that he was staring at them. King hurried to introduce himself to them, simultaneously apologizing for his behavior. He was here to find Levi Farm. One of the guards guessed which Levi he was talking about, but he wondered how this guy knew about him. King replied that he did not know him personally, but his uncle, Marl, who works here as a bodyguard, said that he was close to him. The guard immediately warmed up when he heard the familiar name. Marl often boasted about his nephew. Immediately feeling sad, the man assumed that King was here to find out his uncle's location. But 6 months had already passed since they heard anything about him. Still, the guard decided to take the guy to Levi. Brother Marl was keeping an eye on him, and since he doesn't have any special talent with a sword, he's just working here part-time. Walking past the building, King noticed 3 thugs, which seemed strange to him. Approaching the training ground, the guard told King to wait for him, and he walked forward. He approached the man who was watching the fighters training and whispered something in his ear. Hearing about Marl's bodyguard's nephew, the man turned sharply towards King. The man introduced himself as the captain of the guards, Ryan Eli. The guy introduced himself in response. The guard hurried away, leaving them alone. Having learned who King was looking for, Ryan said that Levi should return soon. But everything about his uncle was complicated. Any information received about Marla was important for the guy. After thinking a little, the captain said that there was a problem in Unnam, and the deputy guards with the 3rd gentleman went there. And he also heard that Lady Terra made a special request for Marl to go with them. King didn't understand why Madame Tai would send his uncle on such a dangerous mission, not to mention the fact that he was missing. Why she didn't send a search party after them. The guy's words seemed rude to the captain towards Mrs. Tai. Besides, bodyguard Marl is not the only one who disappeared. The deputy guards and the 3rd gentleman also disappeared. And this is a big problem for the White Dragon Trade Association. Remembering those thugs, King realized that Madame Terra had hired many professional mercenaries. She plans to send them to Unnam soon. If he had gone with Marl, then nothing would have happened. Until this day, the White Dragon Trade Association acted independently without the help of the Broken Fist Group, which has the greatest influence in Unnam. Ryan heard that in connection with this incident they requested their help. That's all he knows about this situation. In any case, King must understand that Ms. Tai is also in dire straits, and she is doing everything possible to clarify the situation. Seeing Levi approaching, the captain left King under the pretext that he needed to check on Lady Terra. Before he left, the guy asked if he could join the people going to Unnam. He was ready to do any work until he got there. Looking closely at the guy, Ryan said that King looked like the one who knew how to hold me in his hands, so he would put in a good word for him. Looking around, King turned to Levi, who was wondering why he was called. Every year, countless talented people come to the world of Murim. Then, the people of Murim select individuals whose talent soars as high as the heavens and elect them to positions known as the 7 lower heavens. And the person who is here now was not selected into the 7 lower heavens. However, his thinking and analysis abilities were unsurpassed in the entire nation. This is an incredible talent. This person is called Infinite Mind, and his name is River Milo from the Wise Court. And then she, a girl capable of single-handedly defeating several dozen of the strongest opponents. Alex Weist is an otherworldly force. There is a group of traveling mercenaries consisting of a dozen people centered around a martial artist named Silas Everett. For the right price, they can do any job, no matter how difficult. They are known as the Iron Band. And the two who are here now are deputy captains. A terrifying aura emanates from these two, making one's veins shake. But for some, only Alex's exposed breasts were terrifying, as for example for the captain, who could not take his eyes off the girl's bust. Young people came to the association to conclude an agreement. Now the White Dragon Trade Association was under their protection. For a tidy sum, the guys were ready to go to Unnam even tomorrow. Unlike Alex, River was full of enthusiasm. Madame Terra thanked them for the services they provided. River, confident in his abilities, shouted that the woman would be able to thank them again when they rescued Master Loy. But they were wondering whether they would go to Unnam alone or with someone. Then the guy realized that they would not go alone, but in the company of Death Breath Hunter, Fate Soar, Arrow of the Setting Sun, Dylan Felix, and Swordsman of the Seven Paths, Gabriel Stone. River informed Madame Terra that 5 of them would depart tomorrow. The rest of the Iron Squad were accompanying the clan leader on another mission. But they planned to unite in Sashon on the way to Unnam, so the woman had nothing to worry about. Ms. Tai actually became less worried after hearing the guy's words. Ryan felt encouraged that everyone from the Iron Squad was here, which meant that the chances of saving the third master had increased. He said out loud that they would now prepare for departure, so they would meet tomorrow. Seizing the moment, the captain turned to Mrs. Tai and her son Leo with a request to take the nephew of the bodyguard Marl, who had recently come here, to Unnam. Madame Terra replied that she did not see a problem in this, so let him do what he wants. Worried that his mother had worked too hard today, Leo prepared to take her to the room. Later, Leo and Paula fought because her sister wanted to go to Unnam with everyone else. Her brother couldn't let her go there when they don't even know if Loy is alive. Paula was confident that she could more than defend herself because she had trained in martial arts at the Gongdong Monastery, a martial arts school hidden in a cave. Leo didn't understand why his sister decided to risk her life like that. Paula replied that their brother, their own blood, had disappeared. She could not stand aside and watch what was happening. Leo didn't know what to answer to these words, so he just silently looked at his sister. The next day, the assembled group set off for Unnam, King sitting in the carriage as a coachman. His 6th sense told him that everything would not go as smoothly as he would like. A group of several dozen and 8 crews went to Unnam. In the morning, Levi asked King if his older brother slept well. Levi, for his part, was too excited to sleep. King didn't even pay attention to the boy who addressed him. Seeing that his older brother did not answer him, the boy thought that he was not at all like his uncle Marl. He was too calm and reserved. Levi decided to try to talk to King again. He said that this was his first experience on such a campaign. His father was also a bodyguard and died several years ago on a similar mission. So now the boy is more nervous than usual. Mr. Marl told him that he would be the first to die if something happened. So he personally taught Levi several cultivation techniques, but he also grumbled at him and told him not to slack off during training, for which the boy was very grateful to him. Hearing the name of his mentor, King interestedly asked Levi what techniques Marl taught him. Levi, happy that his brother paid attention to him, replied that these were the 3 fundamental cultivation techniques, the main part of which was that if he was patient and stuck to it to the end, it would help him take the path of a master martial arts. At a time when everyone around said that Levi had no talent and should stop studying martial arts, Mr. Marl was the one who understood the boy's feelings and took him under his wing. So he trains as hard as he can. Levi really hoped that Mr. Marl was okay, and nothing had happened to him. Finally, looking at the boy, King told him that if something happened, he could stay behind him. Levi noticed that his older brother has a sword, but is he really a reliable and strong person? If something really happened, would he be safer staying with the Iron Squad or with him? Alex called out to River to pay attention to King, who was riding behind the entire procession. River noticed that this guy, compared to the other bodyguards here, was in a completely different league. There is something strange in his chi, it seems to be there, but at the same time it is not there. Alex once again cast a suspicious glance at the guy behind her. King did not understand how he should live his life now. He spent his whole life honing his martial art, and now the only thing he must do is find Mr. Marl and Charlotte too. But he had absolutely no idea what he would do next, as soon as he found them. Does he really want to seek revenge against the Northern Heavenly Clan? Maybe this is his path? Or would it be better to live an unknown life like now? King was tormented by these thoughts. The boy was sure that his father would want him to throw away all the bitterness that he has inside and live a good life, free from all worries. However, will he be able to do this and forget all the grievances? The blood inside him boils with fierce hatred. King did not know what to do and how to get rid of these thoughts. Then the guy emerged from his thoughts because of a cry that the vanguard had stopped. The procession will cross the river to Unma, that is, the Valley of the Clouds, in 4 hours. Until then, they should split into 2 groups and take turns resting while the first group eats and the second stands guard. The captain added that the second group will take a break after the first group finishes eating. They stopped at a small village on the riverbank to have something to eat before the long journey. Entering the tavern, King asked the waiter to bring him something hearty and simple. The pretty girl said with a smile that she knew a suitable dish that King might like. It was called roast pork. Levi was stunned and speechless when he saw this girl. Noticing the boy's gaze following the waitress, King realized that he was interested in her, although he denied it, to which Levi blushed even more and looked away. At this time, members of the Iron Squad entered the tavern, hungry as wolves. They sat down at the table, sparing Levi and King, who had already been served the famous South Sea Tavern pork roast, which made the boy's mouth water. The girl, addressing Levi as if she were an older brother, introduced herself as Eliza Riching. Levi, without hiding his embarrassment, introduced himself to the girl in response. Eliza smiled with delight when she learned that the boy was also a bodyguard. She asked him if she suddenly needed help. Could she ask him from the White Dragon Trade Association? Levi did not expect such attention from her, so without hesitation he answered positively. The boy promised that Eliza could always come and ask for the great Levi. He even made a pinky vow with her. Then strangers entered the establishment, one of whom drew attention to King, peacefully eating pork. River said that these seemed to be hermits from the Gongdong Monastery, and that guy is probably someone of high status. Because their head usually does not send young followers to the outside world, the only situation where this happens is if a high-ranking follower of their martial arts is sent with them, or if they are from the first generation. King asked Levi if he was jealous of the hermits from Gongdong, to which the boy replied that he was not the least bit jealous. The boy is quite happy working as a bodyguard. His father once said that although they are paid for their work, their main task is to protect the lives of customers like a treasure. This is why people believe in the power of bodyguards and count on them. Levi believes that because they live an honest and humble life, there is no more amazing job. Continuing to chew, King glanced sideways at the serious Levi. The guy told the boy that his father was a worthy man. Suddenly, a scream was heard throughout the entire establishment. A man, one of the hermits, nervously shouted to call him and quickly drag his ass to him. Hearing the heart-rending call, the cook and Eliza hurried into the hall with the guests. Before he could cross the threshold, the man saw his older brother. The next second, a roast pork flew right into his face. Eliza screamed when she saw that a guest had done this to her father. The hermit, looking angrily at his brother, Hunter Richung, shouted that while he was eating his food, the future heir of the Gongdong Monastery, the talent Darcy Norman, broke a tooth. The monk believed that Hunter was trying to take revenge on the great family of the Gongdong Monastery. With Darcy's broken tooth wincing in pain, Hunter must take responsibility for it. Wiping the remnants of food from his face, the man reproached his brother for his bad behavior, but in any case, he was no longer associated with the monastery in any way. The monk was seething with the impudence of his brother, who dared to refuse responsibility. A frustrated Hunter explained that he always checks the quality of food before serving it. Looking straight at his brother, the cook asked if he still held the grudge that caused him to stage this performance. The hermit only remained silent and looked at Hunter with displeasure. 15 years ago, there was a competition that was held every 3 years, Ham Taipen. At that time, at these competitions, Hunter defeated his brother every time. Dante Reaching knew this since Gongdong Monastery was founded. The honorary title of Gongdong High Peak could not be achieved by him. With Hunter, he was doomed to always be second. Dante will never forget or forgive his brother for this humiliating defeat. Several months later, Hunter was embroiled in a scandal that resulted in his meridians being destroyed and him being expelled from Gongdong Monastery. However, this humiliating defeat that Dante suffered that day filled his heart with rage. Looking sadly at his brother, Hunter said that the only thing that was hurt that day was Dante's pride. But for a man, he was wrongly accused and ended up losing all opportunity to practice martial arts. But that doesn't mean that Dante should treat him. Turning to Darcy, Hunter clarified whether he really broke his tooth because of the food. To which the guy replied that his tooth was now broken and hurt like hell. Stealthily looking at the cook, one of the hermits began to lament that if Master Todd found out about this incident, it would become an even bigger problem. Earlier, this man, noticing that the boy had a broken tooth, asked him what happened. To which Darcy replied with a smile that it happened a few days ago. When he was training with his older brother Dante, he accidentally tripped and broke it. Pursing his lips, Hunter said that the future of Gongdong Monastery looks quite bleak. Not only have Master Todd's beliefs and teachings been forgotten, but they all resort to lies. Dante decided that his brother was looking down on him again, and he could not allow that to happen. Using the technique, he threw Hunter back several meters. In tears, Elisa fell next to her father, whom his brother slammed into the wall, shouting that Dante did not dare do this to her father and hurt him. The members of the Iron Squad have lost their appetite because of what is happening, but they need to focus on their task, so there is no point in getting involved in this showdown. Rushing at Dante with her fists, the girl began beating him in the chest, shouting that his accusations were false. Eliza was the only one who prepared all the ingredients. She knows that there could not be a stone there. Besides, Hunter double-checked everything. Seething with anger because the girl raised her hand to him, Dante backhanded her in the face, causing Eliza to fall with a roar at his feet, losing consciousness. Alex had lost her patience with the behavior of these fucking bastards. She was about to get up from the table, but River held her by the shoulder. Sitting her down, he explained that the Gongdong Monastery is one of the families of the 9 great clans. If they became their enemies, then difficult times would come for the Iron Squad. In any case, the girl believed that this was already going beyond all limits. Then Levi came out to Dante. The man was wondering what kind of boy decided to stand in his way. The boy said with excitement that he was a bodyguard. Dante guessed that he was from the White Dragon Trade Association. Then Levi must not be worried about the close relationship they shared with the association. Levi, trembling with fear, asked the man to show mercy just once and forget about this incident. It made Dante laugh that this boy in front of him was so polite. Stopping laughing, the hermit calmly explained to Levi that a bodyguard who receives money for practicing martial arts does not dare stand in front of the followers of the Gongdong Monastery. Seething with anger, the boy shouted that being a bodyguard is very important and there's more to it than that. Dante lost his temper because of the impudence of this bastard. He not only dared to stand in front of the hermit, but also lecture him, so he took out his blade to cut off his hand. Losing all patience, King sighed and stood up from his desk. River tried to stop the guy, telling him not to be a fool and just close his eyes to it. This boy himself decided to do what he shouldn't have, and will be punished for it. In this case, they can't help him. At least, Dante won't kill him. Levi is lucky that only his body and pride will be harmed. Without turning around, King replied that for a martial artist, losing an arm means the end of his life, and even dogs have pride. However, real pride is to endure a fate full of loneliness, while doing everything possible to follow my beliefs. Looking at River with eyes full of contempt, King said that this was something he would never be able to understand. River looked at the guy with displeasure and did not understand why he saw the tree, but did not see the forest behind, and whether he really wanted to become an enemy of the Gongdong Monastery because of his idiotic beliefs. For King, only this was enough and he is not going to retreat back. At the speed of light, he rushed from his spot to protect his younger brother. With 2 fingers, he stopped the tip of the blade, which was already ready to cut the boy's hand. Frightened, Levi found himself behind King's back. He did not expect his older brother to come to his defense. All members of the Iron Squad turned to the flaring conflict. Darcy and his escort froze in fear, beginning to worry about their mentor. Dante, in turn, was surprised that this guy blocked the sword with his bare hands because this is the highest technique of mastery. However, something like that won't work on him. With his face twisted in anger, he shouted in King's face, "How dare he block the honorary master's sword with just his fingers?" Dante couldn't understand who this bastard is and how he dares to get in his way, or maybe he doesn't know that in front of him is the hermit Gongdong. King responded threateningly that he could perceive him as the boy's older brother and advised him to leave it at that. Feeling the approaching fear, Dante saw that this guy did not have the eyes of someone who was asking for a favor. To get this insolent person out of his way, the man used the rising cloud palm technique. But King immediately stopped the attempt to attack him with his sword. The main character said that a child's duty is to enjoy his life, a parent's duty is to raise a child, a merchant's duty is to increase his profits. The duty of the ascetic is to purify his worldly desires. Everyone has a duty that they must fulfill, however. Apparently, Dante cannot do something so banal. He disgraces other ascetics, King concluded. With one press of 2 fingers, the young man caused the blade to split into many pieces. One fragment cut Dante's cheek, causing him to freeze in place. After this, other ascetics attacked King and told him to shut his mouth. Turning to Levi, King asked him to quickly escort the girl and her father out of the building. Looking at his older brother in fear, the boy agreed to fulfill his request. The next moment, King returned to the two hermits attacking him. Each time he dodged their attacks with lightning speed. With the speed of light, King defended himself and attacked them back. The ascetics received blow after blow, but none of them could overtake the guy. King, without much effort, dealt with the two hermits. Then something whistled past his head, but the guy managed to dodge in time. The remainder of the blade, which he split, crashed into the wall behind King. Looking at the sword in the wall, the guy turned to the man who threw it at him. It was Dante, who, with an evil grimace, rushed towards the offender with an impulse to kill him. King maneuvered between the ascetic's blows, striking him along the way. As a result, the young man grabbed Dante by the collar and pulled him towards him. He was about to pull his blade from his belt to finish off this bastard, but he changed his mind and began punching him in the face one after another. Looking up from what he was doing, King turned his attention to Darcy. The boy pulled out the rest of the blade from the wall and put it to King's skin. He didn't understand how this guy dared to attack ascetics. Still holding Dante, King grabbed the blade with his bare hand. A deafening crash was heard. Levi, who was carrying the unconscious Eliza on his back, stared in fear at this sight. Darcy sank to the floor with his arm broken and twisted upward, tears streaming from his eyes. The members of the Iron Squad looked at all this with wide eyes, making no attempt to do anything. Losing consciousness from pain, Darcy fell to the floor. River did not see anything good in what was happening, because members of the Iron Squad were present. If they get involved in this, they will no doubt face consequences because the people of Gongdong Monastery are very vindictive. They can no longer turn a blind eye to what is happening. But if they make a mistake, they will become enemies of the monastery. River did not know what to do in such a situation because they are in a complete mess. The beaten Dante, whom King continued to restrain, said that he could not get away with it just like that, since he had injured the followers of the Gongdong Monastery. King did not like the fact that this man dared to threaten him, but what was more interesting was how he was going to take revenge on him. Dante replied that the whole monastery would come for the guy. This is the strength of ascetics. But for King, it did not matter. Dante shouted in the young man's face that he was a real idiot for daring to attack them. Sharply pulling the man towards him by the collar, King leaned towards his ear. King hissed in Dante's ear that all he needed to do was get rid of them all. Dante couldn't believe that King would openly threaten them. With a sneer, the guy told the man that no one would stop him from doing this. Then the door to the establishment opened, and Paula and Captain Ryan appeared on the threshold. The girl found out that Dante's older brother was here, so she went in to greet him. Before they had time to cross the threshold, they saw a terrifying picture where several hermits were lying beaten, and some guy was holding the also beaten Dante by the collar. Already on the street, Paula told King that because of him, relations between the Gongdong Monastery and the White Dragon Trade Association had worsened. The girl couldn't imagine how he could attack the ascetics. Or maybe the guy didn't know that they were closely related. Paula did not understand what King was thinking about, inflicting such wounds on them. Besides, when leaving, the ascetics promised to take revenge on him for this. The guy should be grateful that they allowed him to go with them to Unam, so he did not dare to do so. After listening to Paula, King apologized to her, but he had something to say in response. He told her that first they had to find out the details of what happened and check the condition of the people involved in this incident. The girl did not understand what King meant. The young man put his hand on Levi's back and said that although he is young, he is still the bodyguard of the White Dragon Trade Association, so they should keep an eye on people like him. Not to mention that the girl in the tavern almost lost her life, and Levi tried to prevent it and almost lost his arm. Just because Gongdong Monastery is highly respected does not mean that all their actions should be justified, and King knows that Lady Paula is a follower of Gongdong Monastery. However, she must understand the position she is in. Now Paula is not a follower of the monastery, but the leader of a trade association and the person who is leading the campaign. Therefore, the king thinks that it would be wiser to listen to his people first before making any decision. The girl, amazed by the young man's speech, did not know what to answer him, so she silently looked at him. But the next second, turning away, she reluctantly admitted her mistake and apologized to King. But in any case, the fact that ascetics are now in this state is a big problem. King responded that he took full responsibility, and if he were not willing to face the consequences, he would not have gotten involved. Paula recalled that the Gongdong Monastery, one of the 9 great clans, King interrupted her, saying that nothing in this world lasts forever. The girl did not understand what he meant. King explained that even if the monastery had a strong foundation, they would not last forever. As the guy said, he will take full responsibility for what happened, and if this does not satisfy them, then Levi and King will leave the White Dragon Trade Association and act on their own. Deciding to defuse the situation, Captain Ryan told the lady that now it was better for everyone to calm down. Because this is not something that can be solved so easily. You need to sleep first, and tomorrow everything will be clarified. After a short silence, Paula agreed with the man and left, and the captain turned to King, reminding him that a rather large problem had arisen that he must somehow solve. With a serious look, the guy just said that he would wait for them. Ryan was both surprised and annoyed that he was just going to wait for people from the monastery to come to him. A little later, still annoyed by the guy's words, Paula couldn't believe that she had allowed this crazy bastard to join their group. Levi, feeling guilty, apologized to his older brother because it was because of him that he got into trouble. But King told him not to worry about it, but rather to bring something for the night, because they would sleep in the open air. Levi obeyed and immediately rushed off in search of things. When the boy ran away, River, who was standing nearby, approached King and wanted to talk to him. Roughly interrupting the guy, King said that he needed to rest and was tired of talking. The guy was outraged by this behavior of the young man. River began to assertively say that if they act together, the outcome of this situation will be more favorable than now. Without looking up at the annoying guy, King asked him if he always calculates his every action. River replied that this is the only way to survive in the world of Murim, and King needs to act based on his strengths and weaknesses. This is the only reason why the Iron Squad has survived so long. King didn't want River to misunderstand him. The guy doesn't think that the Iron Squad is doing anything wrong. The people of this world mostly think so. But he believes there are times when you have to follow your heart, and today was such a case. Everyone believes that compassion and kindness have disappeared from this world, and all because the strong continue to mock the weak, and the weak have nowhere to cry and be indignant. All this time, standing nearby behind the stones, the young people were eavesdropped by the entire Iron Squad. King continued to say that in this bloodthirsty world, if a person who has learned martial arts also begins to abuse his power, then there is no point in being a martial artist. River, listening to King, really began to fear him. His beliefs will become a great threat to the world of Murim. He shouted out loud that one person cannot change the whole world. The world is not as simple as he thinks. Smirking at River's words, King said that one candle can light up the darkness. At least he will be the light that will lead people out of the darkness. This is the reason why King learned martial arts and why he should continue his path. When Levi arrived, they lit a fire. The boy once again apologized to his older brother for this situation. He believed that it was all his fault. If Levi hadn't intervened, they wouldn't be in this situation. King told him that his main mistake was that he did not take into account his weakness. Anyone can get into trouble, and the main thing is how a person can solve it. But in Levi's case, he got himself into a mess that he couldn't solve on his own. King thinks that the boy knows that the world of Murim is a cruel place where the weak die and the strong survive, so he just needs to become stronger. Having finished his monologue, King looked sideways at the boy sitting next to him. Levi stared ahead, not saying a word. Seeing his condition, King affectionately patted his hair. Trying to calm him down, King quietly said that on the other hand, he was able to save the lives of 2 people, so he should be proud that he had the courage to do so. Continuing to ruffle the boy's hair, King praised him for his good job. Levi could not hold back his tears from what was said. He thanked his older brother for the instructions and said that he would remember what he told him. After sitting in silence for a while, Levi asked to ask King a question, to which he agreed. The boy wondered what kind of training he would have to go through to become as strong as King and be able to break a sword with his bare hands. King replied that this technique is called Finger of Destruction, but the guy learned to forge as a child, so he knows how to forge swords. Levi asked with interest about the sword that King was holding in his hand, whether he forged it himself. The young man replied that after countless hours spent on forging swords, he began to notice flaws in the swords, although this would not work with good swords forged by masters blacksmithing. The main character looked at his hand, hardened from forging and grueling training, on which there were many scars. The guy remembered the stone that Mr. Marl once brought him. For 2 years he tried to forge a sword from this stone, but he did not want to obey it. Overbearing himself, the king continued to stubbornly forge the blade, but this rebellious bastard did not want to accept the owner. King hoped that he would be lucky and everything would finally work out for him. And one fine day he was able to forge it. His 2 years of hard work had finally paid off, but that was not the case. The blade was still dull, and no matter how many times he tried to sharpen it, only the whetstone wore off. Now King clearly saw that the blade would persist until the end until one of them lost. After dozens and hundreds of attempts, the guy managed to sharpen the edge of the blade. He named the sword Snowflower, after his long-ago Charlotte, the girl he missed. This sword was not a holy sword or a demon sword. This blade he forged was an enchanted sword. It is overflowing with evil chi, and if King is not careful, the sword will consume him. Levi was delighted with this sword. It was incredible and very beautiful. Then King drew attention to the approaching Alex, who was bringing them food. Stopping in front of the guy, she handed him a jug of drink and a tray of aromatic food for him to eat. Levi, praising the delicious dumplings, wondered why the deputy leader of the Iron Squad personally brought them food. He assumed that they wanted Big Brother to join them. But in this case, she would not have left without telling him anything. Suspecting something was wrong, King motioned for the boy to shut up. The guy clearly knew that someone was hiding in the grass behind them and watching them. Levi, noticing his older brother's wariness, called out to him. They immediately shouted at the boy to return to the South Sea Tavern. King hurried Levi. The boy tensed at the behavior of his older brother, but still obeyed him and ran. The young man continued to stand in place, ready to attack at any second, turning away from the boy. He gripped the blade tightly in his hands so that the veins on his arm bulged. A voice came from the grass praising King's sword, and dozens of eyes appeared. From there, an old man came out to King and asked where the guy got this sword from. To which King replied that he was a simple swordsman from the north. This old man was the elder brother of Gongdong Monastery, Lucas Noah, who found the swordsman's tone arrogant. He came to clarify today's incident and that the guy was bullying the followers of the monastery. King replied that he did not mock anyone, but his brothers were a different matter, and apparently they did not tell him the whole truth. Dante and Darcy shouted at each other that the older brother should not listen to King, because he is a lying bastard who uses strange martial arts and he is very cunning. So it will be better if Lucas deals with him quickly. They continued to shout that this guy was definitely plotting something against Gongdong Monastery, and it would be better if they killed him here and now. After listening to the brothers, Lucas, pointing his finger at King, accused him of lying and tarnishing the honor of the Gongdong Monastery, and not only that, he also dared to dishonor the ascetics and break the precious swords of the monastery, and for bringing his brother to such a state, King must accept appropriate punishment. The guy didn't understand why this old man was talking so much if he had already planned to kill him. Therefore, they had better drown themselves and begin. For the upcoming battle, he unsheathed his snowflower. Ascetics were rapidly approaching King from different directions, ready to kill him. The guy quickly drew his sword, ready to confront them all. With one swing of his sword, he threw all the ascetics back at once. Lucas couldn't believe that with a simple swing of his sword, he created such a strong gust of wind that it was able to blow away the first generation of followers. A second wave of ascetics with drawn swords immediately rushed towards the guy. But then he already created a powerful gust of wind, which threw back these fighters as well. Before he could exhale, an ascetic attacked him from behind, whom he noticed in time. Without turning to him, King used the Finger of Destruction technique, causing the blade to shatter into small fragments. And then the owner of the sword himself got it, so that he flew head over heels into the nearest stones, which broke under the pressure. Looking at all this, Lucas noticed that this guy only uses the sheath of the sword and simply throws away the ascetics. He does not even try to kill them. Here you can definitely say that he is a martial artist. Dante screamed that this bastard was going to destroy the Gongdong Monastery, so he needed to be attacked with everything that was available and killed on the spot. The elder brother tried to stop the followers from attacking because they would not be able to defeat him. The ascetics are no match for King because he is a true martial artist, but they did not listen to him. King was already prepared to repel the attacks of his followers. While Dante and Darcy trembled on the sidelines in fear, Lucas, realizing that King was just toying with them, pulled out his blade to finish off this guy. He immediately realized that this was not just a swordsman from the north, but a master, however. He would not go further, because Lucas would not let him. He is not going to endure any more humiliation, but will simply end it with one blow. By using the 5 elements of destruction technique, Lucas hoped to kill him. Only before he had time to fully put the technique into action, King found himself behind him, which Lucas did not expect at all. Using the Moonlight Sky Cut technique, he attempted to overtake his enemy a second time. But King, without making much effort, instantly repelled his attack. This made elder brother Lucas surprised by such strength. Far from the battle stood 2 spectators who did not understand how this was even possible. Paula said that his opponents are not just anyone, but the first generation of followers of the Gongdong Monastery, which is one of the great clans. Even when they attack all together, they cannot at least cut his clothes. He simply blows them away like a gust of wind blows away fallen leaves. Captain Ryan told her that in the world of Murim there are people who hide their real skills. They are known as respected beings. Truly strong martial artists centered their beliefs around pain in the world of Marima. They strive to be like the most ordinary people. That's why Ms. Tai has always paid attention to people who never stand out. Paula did not quite understand what the captain meant by this man's real identity. Ryan thoughtfully explained that King said that he was Marl's nephew and where the bodyguard himself came from. Not far from the battle, the entire Iron Detachment gathered. One of them suggested that, apparently, this guy was determined to destroy the Gongdan Monastery alone. Faith was upset that he couldn't join the fight, and Dylan only noticed that there were too many followers. But in any case, this battle was too tough for them. Felix said that these bastards have long been proud of the glory of their family, and not of their own merits, so they are no match for that guy. She was irritated by the fact that even the Iron Squad is no match for him. Only the leader is able to cope with him. Watching Felix, River couldn't believe that even the proud older sister showed King respect. Mentally turning to the leader, River thought that he needed to hurry up and team up with this guy. At this time, the battle between King and Lucas still did not end. The guy absolutely calmly reflected the blows but did not attack. Lucas was irritated by the fact that this bastard dared to play with him. King simply blocks his attacks and doesn't even take Lucas seriously. Using the Blade of Heaven, the old man demanded that the guy use everything he had. Deliberately mocking the follower, King apologized to him for his disrespect, saying that it had been quite a while since he had seriously fought with someone. The guy asked permission to show Lucas all his power. He used the Shadow Sword of the End, the Shooting Star Spirit technique. Spinning a huge, powerful tornado above him, the guy was ready to show all of himself. The old man froze in place from such a destructive force that could kill him. Lucas fell to his knees from his own helplessness, looking at his approaching death. When King's blade was already a millimeter from the old man's throat, he was asked to stop. Levi and Hunter ran towards them as fast as they could, begging the swordsman not to kill his follower. The old man turned to the man, recognizing him as a former follower of the monastery. After some time, Lucas was explained what happened that day, and all the followers knelt before him. He couldn't believe that while he was training in solitude, Hunter's meridians were destroyed and he was kicked out of the Gongdong Monastery. Lucas was very angry with his brothers because this was not enough for them. They turned out to be so insignificant that they resorted to such insidious methods. Turning to Hunter, Lucas explained to him that they then said that he killed many brothers due to the fact that he was absorbed by demonic ki, which is why he was expelled from their monastery. Now everything fell into place for him. But even then, he thought that something was wrong here. It was difficult for him to believe that the person who received the title, the highest peak of Gongdong, was the one whom Lucas called his brother, could do such a thing. Part of him understood that there was no point in this, but he just accepted it and moved on. The old man became smug and believed that Hunter chose this path to become stronger. Lucas blamed himself for his ignorance and for allowing this. But Lucas didn't understand why Hunter didn't say anything about it. He could have gone and talked to the Lord or explained his circumstances to the clan elders after all. He could have told him. Even if Lucas was in secluded training, with his strength, he could do anything. Hunter told his brother that he was just tired of it all. Lucas didn't quite understand what his brother meant. Hunter explained that he was very tired of his position in the monastery. As he grew stronger and more respected, Hunter began to realize that many people harbored resentment and anger towards him. His life in the monastery became worthless. When everyone turned their backs on him, he became truly lonely. However, at this time he met his wife, who always supported him and remained by his side. Then Hunter realized that there was no point in him staying in the monastery and decided to leave everything to quietly enjoy life with his wife and daughter. Eliza, standing next to her mother, with tears in her eyes, asked to leave her dad. She no longer knew what else she needed to do for this. Then Darcy jumped up and babbled that he had done nothing wrong. He never intended to harm this man or his family. All this was planned by Dante's older brother. He forced him to do it. Dante was beside himself with anger that this bastard dared to betray him. At this point, he jumped up and shouted to Lucas that he was an arrogant bastard who was obsessed with martial arts. He was obsessed only with this, and what was happening around him did not interest him. Lucas knew nothing about the internal squabbles in their clan. Since Dante couldn't catch up with him in martial arts, it was inevitable that Lucas would become the next head of the clan. But when he heard that Hunter was a candidate to be the next head of the clan, he couldn't accept it. So Dante did his best to get rid of him so that at least Lucas can become the next head. He screamed heart-rendingly that no one knows how much he has done for the monastery, and he treats him like crap. Although Dante has helped his older brother for decades, and for everything he has done, Becoming a follower of the first generation is natural, and he even has the right to post clan heads. Dante didn't do anything wrong. This is what Lucas had to do to succeed, and he acts like a righteous man. The elder brother, digesting the information he had heard, stood and silently looked at his angry brother. But the next second he laughed out loud because the Gongdong Monastery was so rotten. He agreed with Dante that he really didn't know anything other than martial arts. Lucas was just a puppet in this whole show. Dante can't even imagine how much he wants to rip his head off now. But this will be a blessing for such a bastard. He will suffer the same fate as Hunter, and his meridians will be destroyed. Lucas will do everything to make his life twice as insignificant as his life Hunter. Starting today, Elder Brother will rid the Gongdong Monastery of the rotten bastards. Anyone who is against it will be torn to pieces, and he will devour everyone until there is nothing left of them. So they should prepare for the consequences of their actions. Lucas apologized to Hunter for everything that happened to him, even though a simple apology would not be enough. Starting today, Gongdong Monastery will do everything to help his family. Tearing up, the old man sincerely apologized for everything that Hunter had to go through. He was too stupid and naive. Hugging his brother, Hunter said that Lucas's words were more than enough and nothing more needed to be done. But Lucas was still depressed about everything that happened to him. Looking at King, Lucas reflected that with his martial arts, he began to think that he had reached one of the highest ranks. He spent his whole life to become a martial artist. But this young man, who looks 20 years much stronger than him, Lucas is not his opponent. Indeed, the heavens are unfair. After the old man saw the 7 lower heavens, he could not believe that there were still people like this guy left. Perhaps he even has the potential to climb to the top of this world. Lucas came closer to King and, after hesitating a little, said that he knew about his situation and that he was heading to Unnam. The guy replied that this was true. The old man felt guilty that because of them he had lost a whole day. Thanks to the guy, Lucas saw the nasty nature of the Gongdong Monastery, so for everything that King did for him, he wants to introduce him to someone who can help the guy. The old man told King that upon arrival in the province of Unnam, he would find the Scholar of Three Thoughts, Alexandra Nicole. They have been friends for a long time. He is all quiet, so it will be difficult to find him. If King tells him the name of Lucas, then most likely he will help. The guy thanked the old man, but he was wondering why he was doing this for him. The follower replied that it was not only because he was indebted to King, but he had a feeling that they should meet. The young man sincerely apologized for not showing due respect before. After King left, Lucas ran the guy's name through his mind and realized something. Looking after the leaving young man, he could not believe that it was really him. In the morning, the detachment crossed the river for the further journey to Unnam. Saying goodbye, Eliza asked Levi to come when he had time. Also thanks to Lucas, she had the opportunity to study martial arts at Gongdong Monastery. King noticed that when, due to his impatience, he showed his abilities, everyone began to shun him. It was a problem for him. He didn't think it would be so difficult. Continuing on the cart, the guy got tired of his younger brother's excessive attention. Losing all patience, he shouted at Levi to stop staring at him in awe. Continuing to admire King, the boy said that he respects him very much and considers him amazing. Levi was wondering how his older brother became so good at martial arts and how long it would take him to become as strong. King already regretted that he had intervened in that conflict at all. But he still answered the boy that the 3 fundamental cultivation techniques that Mr. Marl taught him were not some average cultivation technique. At first, it may seem inferior to the average cultivation technique because it is slow at the beginning. But at a certain stage, Levi's speed will increase enormously. The boy just needs to be patient and try to learn it well. King also gave Levi advice that it was better for him to use a heavier sword. There is no need to use light swords that are used in the trade association. The boy needs to train with a long 2-handed sword, which will be twice as heavy as his sword. The young man noted that based on Levi's physiology, his body had the potential to become bigger and stronger with enough training. Therefore, a heavy and long sword would be the best choice for him. With enthusiasm, Levi said that he would then use it. After some time, the group reached Sacheon province. They will stop here for today and will rest in one of the taverns nearby, taking turns guarding the carts. Until tomorrow, everyone must rest properly. First of all, King and Levi went to choose a new sword for the boy. But no matter what sword the sellers showed, unlike the boy's delight, King didn't like any of them, until the guy noticed a trading store located further from everyone else. King immediately headed towards her. Catching up with his older brother, Levi was grateful to King for finding the sword, but he was wondering why he refused every sword offered. The bored man behind the counter immediately realized that the young people had come for the sword. He noticed an unusual sword that King was holding in his hand. He was interested to know why, of all the dreams, he forged the enchanted one. King asked the merchant how he knew that he had forged the sword himself. The man replied that everything is immediately visible from the hands. King's hands are the hands of the one who forged. Looking at his sword, King said that he did not do this on purpose. The blade itself became sinister. Most likely it was due to the material he used. For this sword, the main character used a stone that was worshipped by an entire village, but then this village was cut out. Then the stone absorbed the evil will and desire of these people. The merchant thoughtfully said that there are what are called weapons of the gods. They are made from the will and desires of the blacksmith, and depending on who made it, the weapon can become sacred or demonic. Therefore, blacksmiths who forge anything must always be careful when creating weapons. The old man added that if someone had such a sword, he would be in big trouble, so King should always keep it with him and he himself should be careful. One mistake, and the guy could lose his mind, and the sword would consume him. But King was already aware of this nuance. Stretching, the seller went deeper into the shop, inviting young people to come inside. He realized that King was not looking for a sword for himself, since he already had the skills of a good blacksmith. Looking at the boy next to him, the seller asked if King was looking for a sword for him. The main character replied that he needed a long sword for the boy. The weight should be at least 4 gyun and the length of about 3 choke. This boy's cultivation technique is well suited for a long sword, which will allow him to master the sword of destruction. Digging through the chest, the merchant found something. He had already forgotten that he had that bastard. The sword that he found was forged when he was young and energetic. The man put his whole heart and soul into it, but since he was too heavy, no one took it. Having difficulty removing the blade from the chest due to lack of strength, the merchant asked King to help him. Raising the sword above his head with ease, King guessed that judging by the red glow of the sword that covered it, the man most likely used hematite ore. This sword is good, and its weight is perfectly balanced. The guy really liked it. The merchant was pleased that the young man appreciated his work. Turning to Levi, the man told him to stop staring at the sword and try to take it. Confident in his abilities, the boy prepared to raise the blade. If you were born with a body that suits a long sword, then you need to try it. Before Levi had time to take the sword from his older brother, he immediately dropped it to the floor. Puffing from the weight of the blade, Levi couldn't understand how King could easily hold it with one hand. The merchant said in disappointment that the kids are now completely weak, and when he was the boy's age, it was nothing at all for him. Levi was ashamed, so he immediately shouted that he dropped the sword because his older brother let him go when the boy didn't was still ready. Overcoming himself, Levi somehow raised the sword, although he was not sure that this particular blade was suitable for him. Holding back a laugh, King told him to think of it as part of his training. About to pay for the weapon, the guy asked the merchant about its cost. With difficulty holding the sword, Levi shouted that he would pay for it himself. Squinting, the man did not take the money. He was grateful that King had come to his rundown forge, and the sword would thank him for that. The young man was uncomfortable, so he still wanted to pay, but the merchant shut him up, saying that it was fine. But if he really wanted to pay, then next time he should buy this old man drinks. He can tell that King has been through a lot, like his enchanted sword. With this guy, a man can drink all night long, talking about many things, especially swords. King silently continued to listen to the seller, and the man continued to say that in the old days he made many good swords for famous people from different famous clans. He tried to remember the name of one of the buyers, but apparently his mind was already getting old. When leaving, the guy thanked the man for the sword and promised to come again. In parting, the old man told Levi to take good care of Redtooth, and if they have problems, they can safely contact him, although the blacksmith does not know whether he will be alive by then. Levi asked him not to talk like that. He was sure that everything would be fine with him, while leaving the boy asked the old man to take care of himself until next time. Having caught up with his older brother, the boy thanked him for today. Thanks to King, he now has a red tooth. The guy did not understand which red tooth he was talking about. Levi explained that the gentleman said that this was the name of the sword. King liked the name and wished the boy to train well. Walking past the main square, they saw a crowd of people who had gathered to look at something. The guys became interested in what happened there. Making their way to the center of the crowd, they stared at what was happening there. Some bandits were beating up old men, shouting for people to get their asses out of here. A grandfather who was being beaten by one of the men was screaming for help. Suddenly, a man appeared behind King and Levi, who was very unhappy that no matter where you went, there were such bastards everywhere. He couldn't believe that everyone was curious about what would happen next. He didn't understand why the Blue Mountain clan, the Mountaintop clan, the Sachin ruling family, didn't see that this pair of elders were being beaten by these bastards. The man abruptly grabbed the hand of the bandit, who was about to hit the old man again. The next second, he crushed his hand without hesitation, unhappy that no one was doing anything about it. Angrily, he threw the screaming man with all his might. Then the second bandit tried to attack him on the sly, but he immediately received a powerful blow from the thug. Rising, he attacked him again, and a short struggle ensued between the men. As if playfully, the thug gave the bandit a click, which sent him flying several meters away. Looking at all this, King said that it looks like the situation is under control of this thug, so they can return to the hotel. Levi was shocked that his snap of his fingers snapped the guy's neck. Entering the hotel, the boy was still in awe of the strength of the thug and how that bandit's head simply turned. Then they saw that all the members of the Iron Squad bowed. River respectfully greeted the head of the Iron Squad. Levi didn't understand what he was talking about and what chapter he was talking about. Then the guys realized that someone was standing behind them. Turning around, they saw the thug who protected the old people in the square. It was the head of the Iron Detachment, Silas. He greeted his guys with a wide smile. Later, River approached the head to talk about what happened to them during this trip. The guy whispered in Silas's ear, who enthusiastically loudly praised the deputy for his good work. Turning his attention to King, the man introduced himself. He was pleased to meet the guy. The man heard that the guy who introduced himself in response had a difficult character. Pointing to his deputy, Silas said he had a lot of problems because of King. With a wide smile, he invited the guy to the meeting that was about to begin. Paula looked sideways at King, whom the head brought to the meeting. She clearly did not like it. Silas didn't expect that the person leading the journey from the White Dragon's trading situation was Miss Paula. Looking at King, the leader said that he heard that this guy's uncle also disappeared. Therefore, he has the same rights to attend the meeting as everyone else. Clearly dissatisfied with the presence of a stranger, Captain Ryan said that this was a very important meeting. Silas retorted that they themselves said that this guy was damn strong, and therefore, he would be a good help. He suggested skipping the formalities because they were now in a situation where anyone would be useful. Alex supported her leader, saying that they shouldn't be picky, they should be glad that they have strong guys in their ranks. Looking at all these people, Levi realized that this was definitely not the place for him. Turning to his older brother, he said that he would leave first to train. King replied that they would see each other tomorrow. When Levi left, Silas decided to start the meeting first. The others already knew the people of the Iron Squad, who accompanied them from the city of Nanju to the province of Gansu, so he decided to introduce those whom the others had not yet seen. Silas started with a guy nicknamed Schroeder. He's not sure about his real name, but you can tell he's a fucking nutcase. The next guy is Arnold Menz. He's an average guy, but a monk who chases women. And last but not least, Drake Tate. He has a shitty personality, so you have to be careful with him. King, seeing the 3 new escorts to Unnam, introduced himself in response. Silas shouted to the whole hall that since we were done with the introductions, we could continue the meeting. He was interested in King's person. As his deputy said, it is impossible to feel his chi, as if it did not exist at all. He is definitely an unusual bastard, and besides, he is trying to hide his powers to the end. Drawing attention to himself, Captain Ryan repeated what he had already discussed with the deputy. To begin with, the situation in Unnam is difficult, and as I know everything, except for the Blue Sword Clan, there is no one more authoritative in Unnam. Therefore, the Broken Kulag was easily able to capture and settle there. King was very surprised to hear this. Meanwhile, Ryan continued to talk about how they were able to found a large clan and gain influence in Unnam. So they were in a constant war with the Blue Sword Clan. Under normal circumstances, the Central Heavenly Alliance would have intervened. But for some reason, they decided to remain neutral, so the situation there is getting worse every day. For these reasons, not only the White Dragon Association was involved, but also countless other trade associations, so they sent a huge amount of money to Broken Fist in hopes of cooperation. But this is another matter. The more important thing is that this situation is detrimental to the trade associations in Unnam province, and their economy is completely destroyed. Silas said thoughtfully that someone seemed to be trying to stop the circulation of money there. River suspected both Broken Fists and Blue Sword. The head suggested that a third party might be involved in all this. Alex picked up that this possibility cannot be ruled out, but it cannot be proven either. Picking his nose, Silas said that all this was very problematic and that there would be enough work. Recalling his presence, King said that this situation, like the disappearance of his uncle, would most likely become clearer when they arrived in Unnam. The captain agreed with his assumption. River said that while they had not encountered this yet, he had sent a spy to Unnam to gather information. By the time they arrived in the province, he would definitely gather some information for them. And Silas kept wondering where the Pathfinder had gone, but it turns out his guys had already sent him away. Alex said that the one who sent him was River, and that's because this slacker is useless in battles anyway. Patting his deputy on the shoulder, Silas praises him for a job well done and leaves the rest to River. As he was about to leave, he asked to be told the final decision. And now that he knew what was going on, it was time to figure out some things in his own way. The captain was unhappy that the head was leaving, although the meeting had not yet ended. Looking at King, Silas suggested that it would be better to walk with him than to sit here. While they were walking, the man praised his deputy for his wisdom, which is why he decides all internal affairs in the Iron Detachment and why he trusts him so much. River understands that the future of the Iron Squad depends on his decisions. He has a high sense of responsibility. Therefore, he always calculates his actions, although it can be difficult for him to draw the line at certain points. Silas realizes that everyone can become like this when faced with great responsibility. He hopes that King can understand River and not just think that he is a hard-headed bastard. While King listened to the chapter, he did not notice how they had reached a dead end. He was curious why Silas brought him here. With a laugh, the man reassured the guy, saying that he was not going to kill him. Smirking, the guy asked if he really thought he could do it. Looking at King, Silas said that he could find out after they exchanged a couple of blows. Radiating ominous energy, King glared at the head. It was as if the two wanted to crush each other with their chi. Laughing, Silas said that the fight would have to be postponed until next time, because now there was something more important that they had to do. Approaching a door and knocking on it, he added that he needed to first obtain some information regarding Unnam. An old man leaned out from behind the door and said that they were closed today. Silas said that he was the head of the Iron Detachment, but the old man still did not understand what he wanted. With a wink, the man said the secret code, Dark Full Moon. After these words, the old man looked around suspiciously. After that, he invited the uninvited guests inside. Entering the room, Silas called King to follow him. When they entered, the old man asked them to wait a little, and he went on. Looking around, King asked what kind of place this was, to which Silas replied that this was one of the Dark Moon Taverns, and the person he was going to meet here now could be the head of the entire organization. This place provides information to martial artists of at least rank them, so ordinary people don't know about this place. The man just wanted King to know about this place. He should always keep it in his head that such places exist, and therefore, the world of Miram is much larger and more mysterious than the guy can think. King thought about the chapter's words that he was telling him to be careful, because the world is not only made up of what can be seen. The guy said out loud that he would definitely remember the head's advice, which Silas really hoped for. Then, a fully dressed man appeared from behind the curtain. He apologized for the long wait. It was an honor for him to meet the head of the Iron Detachment. The origin of Dark Moon is mysterious and no one knows about their chapter. The prerequisites for their creation also remain unknown. As well as the number of people in this organization, this story is shrouded in mystery. However, one thing is for sure, they can get any information before anyone else. This person introduced herself as the head of the Sacheon Dark Moon branch, Emma Rocco. Paying attention to the king, who was standing to the side, Emma inquired about who he was. Silas replied that the guy was an acquaintance, bowing to each other. The man in the robe said that if King knew the head, then he must be an extraordinary person, so it was an honor for Emma to meet him. Inviting the guests to sit down, the girl asked Silas what information he wanted to know today. Throwing a heavy bag of coins onto the table, the head replied that he wanted to know more information about the situation in Uniam. There doesn't have to be a lot of information. The main thing for him is to know everything that is. Emma thought for a second and said that this is the place they have been watching lately. But unfortunately, they couldn't get much information. However, what is certain is the dispute between the Broken Fist and the Blue Sword Clan. Nowadays, everything is run by a third party. Silas thought that then, the merchants who disappeared in Unnam province were most likely captured or killed by a third party. Emma did not agree with this because, if they were killed, then their bodies would have already been found. They would not have been able to get rid of from a large trading group without a trace. The leader wanted the Dark Moon people to find out who the third party was. As Emma said earlier, they were not able to gather much information regarding Unnam province. If the head had come a little later, then perhaps they would have been able to find clues. Silas heard that the Central Heavenly Alliance was not doing anything to solve this problem, but Emma replied that in fact, they had received information that the Alliance had sent a group of inspectors recently. The head did not see the point in this, because it was impossible for these bastards to sit quietly and watch. Rising from the table, Silas said displeasedly that they seemed to have problems, and most likely they would lose more than they would earn. In any case, it was time for them to return to the tavern. Emma knew they were paid more for the information they provided, so it would only be fair if she shared one more piece of information. A man named Trip Boston wants to harm the leader and his squad. He was looking for professional killers for this. Silas was surprised that this old man wanted to kill them. When the men left, Emma called the elder to her. The old man immediately appeared. The girl said that once this person enters Unam province, let the hidden moon follow him. The elder replied that he would make sure they followed the leader. Emma didn't want them to follow him, but rather a man named King. The old man was surprised that the lady wanted to send the hidden moon for someone like him. Not only that, but the mother's talented and small squad of the hidden moon, it seemed to him that it was not worth it. But he had no choice but to agree with the girl. He would notify the hidden moon so that they would send a heavenly ranked detachment after a man named King. Emma was sure that this guy definitely had something important. As the men walked back to the tavern, King remembered that Silas had already proposed the idea of a third party at a meeting. The head replied that a mere guess was no match for accurate information. This small nugget of information they received confirms the existence of a third party, turning a potential threat into an actual danger to the group. In any case, the head has a matter that he needs to deal with, or rather with that old man. King asked who he was. Silas replied that he has a high position in Sachon province, and he is the one who hired the head. Before he joined the group, he was tasked with guarding this old man during the trek from the salt flat basin of Gyeonggi province to Sachon province, all that Silas knows. So this is that he found some kind of treasure in the salt marsh basin. But the man was not interested in this at all. But the old man asked to leave everything secret and even take an oath of silence. But apparently he still does not trust the iron detachment, and this is expected from such bastard. But Silas was beside himself with anger that he dared to give them a death sentence. Laughing, the man told King that he would not allow anything to happen during their journey to Unam. Silas sent the guy back to the tavern, but he had one more thing to do. King looked anxiously after the retreating man for a long time. Later, the guy sat on the balcony of the tavern, watching Levi train. Looking up from his observation, he saw the Iron Company. He was curious where they were going at this hour. The next morning, the group gathered for the further journey. The captain hoped that everyone had slept well, and now there was no time to waste, and they needed to be on alert until the end. Seeing the state of the Iron Squad, Levi was shocked. Ryan was also interested to know what they were doing, that now they couldn't even get up. But River said that there was nothing to worry about. The Iron Squad was so exhausted that they are now sleeping. Keeping his distance from his older brother's cart, Levi couldn't get closer because Silas scared him so much. Out of the corner of his ear, King heard two men nearby talking about yesterday's incident. One of them in the morning at the market heard that last night Lord, who was an important figure in Sachon province, was attacked by some bastards and Kabit along with all the guards. Therefore, in the morning, the Imperial army was sent to catch the bastards behind this. King, puzzled, asked Silas, who was lying on the roof of the wagon, whether it was really necessary to carry out a massacre and kill even innocent people. After a short silence, the man replied that when you pull up grass and if you don't pull it out by the roots, then when spring comes, the sprouts will sprout again. In his opinion, King should learn to dull his feelings for other people's pain, even when a small threat can become fatal for his people. The guy could not believe that this is how the Iron Squad earns its reputation. Silas advised King not to be like that. He had a time in the past where the thirst for justice burned as brightly as the young man, so Silas understands him. Moreover, it was who did not trust them and planned to kill them first. Even though the leader started the bloodshed, it doesn't matter. He's in a position where the lives of his subordinates have to be prioritized. If the man hadn't attacked first, they would have been the ones attacked. Unfortunately, that's how shitty works the world of Murim. He thought King knew this truth, but the guy thought they were just cowards. To this, Silas did not answer anything further. Finally, the group reached the province of Unnam, shrouded in ominous fog. Silas ordered everyone not to let their guard down and keep their eyes open. Here he looked intently into the nearest bushes. King, who had been sitting quietly before, also paid close attention to the same place. Sensing someone's approach, the guy became very tense. A wounded old man and a young girl ran out from there and asked for help. Tang Mountainside family is one of the most famous cities in the entire country. The Tang clan lives there, practicing poisonous art and contract killings. The Tang family of the mountainside is known as the Tang family of Sacheon and the Deer Tang family. The head of the family, the Emperor of 10,000 Poisons, Liam Byrne asked if they had finished their preparations. His nephew, the owner of 10,000 Poisons and the closest to the title of Man of Poison, or Living Incarnation of Poison, Bert Byrne replied that he should not worry. They had not been preparing for long, Bert was angry that the Central Heavenly Alliance was calling them back forward like dogs. However, when it comes to poisons, there is no one better than the Tang clan. Liam doesn't like their current request either, but if Bert suddenly feels that the situation is taking a dangerous turn, then he should get out of there as quickly as possible. The lives of their people should be a priority. The old man also said to take good care of his uncle, who has no knowledge regarding combat arts. His order also applied to his great-granddaughter, Sachin's first flower, Camellia Byrne. The girl asked the head not to worry so much. Addressing everyone, including his subordinates, Liam wished them luck and said that he would pray for their success. Finally, the Tang clan's people reached Unnam province. Camellia drew attention to her uncle walking behind. This stubborn man, as usual, was studying various poisons. The girl was thinking about the situation in Unnam province and that everyone was on edge right now, so she needed to stay on alert. While Camellia was thinking about all this, they attacked a clan member who was riding a little behind. Turning around in amazement, the girl saw that the man had been killed. Someone shouted that it was an ambush and they needed to run away urgently. Bert's horse was frightened by all the commotion and reared up so that the man fell to the ground. He was angry that some bastards dared to attack the Sachon Tang family without noticing that one of the attackers was approaching him from behind. Seeing that her uncle could be killed, Camellia jumped on the enemy, piercing him with a dagger. Bert was surprised and at the same time worried about his niece. Having finished with the enemy, Camellia informed the man that they were surrounded on all sides, so they first needed to get out of here. The Tang clan members retreated and at the same time tried to shoot back from the enemies. Camellia put on a protective mask, took out her daggers, and also gave Bert a signal. The man immediately understood her intentions, so he quickly pulled his mask over his face. The next second, he had already opened a bottle of deadly poison, which immediately began to spread in the air. Bert directed the poison at his niece's naked daggers, thereby poisoning them, and the girl immediately rushed to attack. All the people of the Tang clan immediately retreated to the sides, giving Camellia access to the enemies. Having approached the attackers as much as possible, the girl created a huge explosion. People engulfed in the poisonous gas began to cough and bleed. The clan people were shocked that they were still chasing them, even after being directly attacked by poison. Camellia realized that these people were raised as weapons for murder, so they do not care about their own lives, but it was not clear who they were. One of the attackers was approaching Bert with lightning speed with a blade at the ready. The man prepared to retaliate, even though he did not know martial arts. If this person comes within the radius of Bert's poison, he will die, because this poison is more dangerous than any martial arts. Bert splashed a portion of poison directly into the attacker's face. Without overtaking the man fell to the ground dead. Turning to her uncle, Camellia widened her eyes in fear. Immediately, she shouted to him about the approaching person behind him. Bert turned around at the same second, but it was too late. The brute brushed him away with one blow, forcing him to fly to the side. Camellia from the cloud of poison to protect her uncle, the man immediately turned to her. He immediately began to attack her, but the girl managed to dodge his blows. Other members of the clan immediately joined her, inflicting blow after blow on the thug. Having received minor injuries, Camellia rushed to help her uncle. Holding him down, she helped the man stand up, leading him to a safe distance from the battle. The girl silently looked at her clanmates, making it clear that they should detain these people. They understood her without words, ready to fight for them. But they shouted that they would not be able to detain those people for long, so Camellia and Bert needed to run away as far as possible. Then they were able to run out to the group of the Iron Detachment shouting for help. River and Silas immediately turned questioningly at the girl's screams. King was still tense, ready to draw his sword at any second. River shouted to the strangers to stay put. No one understood what was going on here. Camellia said that they were members of the Tang. She introduced herself and introduced her uncle, one of the respected members of the Tang family. The girl added that they were ambushed and were seriously injured. She asked to help them, and then they would definitely repay this debt. Silas didn't think that the Tang family would also be involved in this, and not only that, that they were brought to this state too. This means that those who attacked them are definitely not ordinary bastards, and if they were chasing this couple, it means that they are already nearby. This will be a huge problem for the group on their way to Unnam. After thinking, the head gave an order to Alex to take several guys with her and check the area and make sure that there was no one nearby. River was thinking that the Tang family would not only pay back the debt, but also pay 100 times more. There was no one better than them when it comes to paying back debts. But the guy didn't know what decision he should make in the end. Should they help the Tang family members and become their allies but put themselves in a dangerous position? Or should they ignore them and focus on their task of finding the third master of the White Dragon Trade Association? But then the guy realized that these two might not be from the Tang family, but from a third party, and were sent to lure the group into a trap. Before he had time to make a decision, King picked up the unconscious man and told the girl to follow him. River angrily yelled at King to stop behaving like last time. He is the one who makes the decisions in this campaign. Looking threateningly at the deputy, the main character said that they were already surrounded, and if River wants to live, he must prepare his ass for battle. The guy completely lost his temper from King's actions, but then the head put his hand on his shoulder. Silas agreed with King that they were already surrounded. Some of them are already there and ready to attack at any second. River took too long to make decisions. The head should not have made him responsible for this mission. Not that he was better. Silas mused that he was an idiot too. He was too focused on the current situation that he didn't even realize that they were surrounded. If the man had realized this earlier, then helping or ignoring the two wouldn't have mattered. A battle with these bastards was inevitable. In this case, Silas thought, the best outcome for the Iron Squad would be to quickly help the Tang family. But then it turns out that King already knew about the current situation. As King approached the cart, he shouted to Levi to make some room for the man. The young man also warned Levi to be ready to protect this cart. The boy agreed with confusion. King added that there is no better training than real battle. Levi was even scared by the words of his elder brother. Camellia, who had been standing behind King the entire time, thanked him for his help. The next second, there was an explosion, causing a huge shockwave. Someone shouted that first of all, they should take care of the wounded, of which there were already many. From behind the clouds of smoke appeared a man who was unhappy that some bastards had taken his loot. For now, he politely asked for those poisonous frogs. King told him that if they planned to do that, then there would be no reason to help them. Unsheathing his blade, he added that in this case they would not have brought those people into the cart. Pointing his sword at King, the thug was surprised by the bastard's wit. In any case, the Crimson Ghost would still kill them even if they got their victims back. He immediately gave the order to his subordinates to kill every single one of them. Camellia and Levi stood protecting the cart in which Bert lay unconscious. Silas shouted for the White Dragon Trade Association and the Iron Company to prepare for battle. Shredder was delighted with the fight. He was ready to cut everyone into pieces. Arnold killed every ugly bastard that stood in his way. Crossing swords with one of the Crimson Ghosts, Captain Ryan demanded to know what they had done to their third master. Paula trembled with fear, finding herself embroiled in a real battle. Sensing something was wrong, the girl turned back with fear in her eyes. One of those people was already planning to kill her, but she didn't even make an attempt to defend herself. Paula was saved by Alex, who arrived on time. She was wildly angry with the girl because she planned to die here without worrying about her own people. Alex warned Paula that once she steps into the real world, it becomes a battlefield. So if she wants to live, she needs to start moving her ass and follow it. Joey Ed roared throughout the area, looking for someone to challenge him, the vice captain. He didn't even notice how the head was flying at him from above with a sword at the ready. There was a deafening explosion, after which Silas pointed his blade at him. He hoped that he could deal with it in one fell swoop, but that was not the case. Joey was able to easily block his attack. This is the first time Silas ever heard about the Crimson Ghosts. Therefore, these bastards most likely came from the mainland. The leader pondered that his cut was not deep enough. The defense of this thug was thicker than it seemed. Joey said that Silas looked quicker than he thought. The leader, in turn, realized that he needed to aim straight for the neck. But first he needs to get rid of his iron mace. He struck his neck with his sword over and over again, Joey screaming as Silas broke his bones. To deliver the fatal blow, the leader used the dragon scale sword technique. Silas managed to overthrow him. The thug fell with a roar, losing consciousness. The head believed that one of these bastards should be left alive for later interrogation, but they just walk on, not caring about their lives. Apparently, in order for them to stop advancing, he needs to kill their leader. At this time, King was already fighting with the head of the Crimson Ghosts. He was surprised that this guy already knew about their ambush before they came here. King asked him if they were behind the disappearance of the White Dragon Trade Association group, as well as the current situation in Unam province. Laughing, the leader replied that he was just a subject for killing and capturing people. There was someone bigger who was behind all this. About to carry out the attack, the guy demanded to know the name of this man. The leader somehow dodged King's attack, amazed by his power. He was shocked that not only could he not sense this guy's chi, but he was also skilled enough to detect them from afar. This kid was also capable of standing up to a martial artist like him and forcing him to fight at his full strength. The leader replied that if King was so interested in knowing the man's name, then the general of the Crimson Ghosts was Dwight Edmond. But King would have to defeat him first. They stood opposite each other with swords at the ready. King did not understand how he could lose his enemy from sight. The leader immediately attacked the guy from the air, but the main character managed to repel his attack. The bandit repeated that he would tell everything if the guy could defeat him. King fought with him carelessly. Because of this, the leader was furious. He demanded the guy to show him everything he was hiding. He could tell it was something quite sinister. Dodging the blows, King attacked his opponent with lightning speed, fulfilling his request. Seeing the guy's attack, the leader realized that he had already seen it somewhere before. He lunged towards King, but he slipped past straight to the bandit. He realized that it was a deception. The leader guessed the guy's intention to make a dash in his direction. This is necessary in order to shorten the distance. This is one of the ways to deal with the owner of the spear. The leader already thought that such a trick would not work with him. But in the blink of an eye, King was above him. The guy wounded the bandit in the arm with lightning speed. He was shocked at how fast this guy was. King chased the leader into the forest like he was his prey. The man noticed that this guy was different from the martial artist from the mainland. He couldn't believe that someone like him existed. For the Crimson Ghosts, he is a real problem. Growling in anger, he was ready to fight King with everything he had, so he used the Fire Dragon Flame Spear. Realizing what was happening, King moved away from the attack. At that second, a powerful explosion thundered through the forest. The leader couldn't believe he had gotten this far with this nameless bastard. He didn't think he would use this technique so early. He already thought that the guy was cut into pieces, but that was not the case. King flew into the air, wearing only a slightly torn kimono. But he was incredibly angry because these clothes were a gift from Mr. Marley. The guy was ready to tear this thug into pieces. At the speed of light, he rushed straight towards the leader. There was another loud explosion, more powerful than his opponent's. The shockwave even reached the main battlefield, knocking out the others. Seeing such power, Silas could not understand who this guy was and what kind of power he had. When the smoke cleared, the leader could barely stand. He was covered in blood. He was curious who King was and where he came from. King replied that the leader needed to defeat him first, so he called him closer to finish what he started. Camellia looked at the fight between King and that man and was shocked by what she saw. Looking at her uncle, she said that they were apparently being helped by an incredible person. Therefore, he needs to hold out just a little longer. Levi, guarding the cart, was trembling with fear. His heart was beating too fast and he was ready to go crazy. The boy prayed and hoped that no one would come to him. Then he drew attention to a member of the Crimson Ghosts, who was looking straight at the boy. Levi was horrified at the idea of him heading towards him. He hoped that he would now turn away from him and go in a different direction. From panic and horror, the boy's body did not move and completely stopped obeying him. Levi tried to force his legs to take even a step, but he couldn't. He remembered that King had mentored him throughout this journey. He helped him even during his breaks. And now Levi can't even swing his sword normally, looking at the approaching enemy. The boy considered himself stupid and insignificant for being scared. So he will never be able to protect anyone. Meanwhile, the enemy has already swung his sword at him. In a moment, Levi remembered Elsa's face glowing with a smile. Pulling himself together, the boy was the first to attack the bandit. Only the clang of his sword could be heard. Freezing in place, the man saw a wound in his stomach. The next second, he received another fatal blow, so that he immediately fell dead to the ground. There was a dagger sticking out of his head that finished him off. Camellia covered the boy, so he didn't have to worry too much. At this time, the battle between King and the leader escalated to the limit. The man reflected that even that man would never have thought that such a person could exist. And if he let him survive now, he would become a huge problem for the Crimson Ghosts. Therefore, he needs to finish this guy here and now. Assuming the end, the bandit used the crazy dragon flight technique. King was not so simple, catching the leader's attack with his hands. The man couldn't believe that King was able to catch Mad Dragon's flight with his bare hands. The next second, the guy hit the spear with his sword, causing it to break into pieces. King is already tired of waiting for the leader to deign to start talking, so he better hurry up. The man stared at the guy in amazement, holding a piece of a spear in his hands. He didn't understand what King meant, and besides, he hadn't defeated him yet. As the guy approached him, the leader retreated a step further. Tripping on a stone, he fell, continuing to shout that the guy had not defeated him yet. Losing patience, King thrust his own spear into the leader's shoulder. Looking at him murderously, he warned that his neck would be next. Therefore, a man should drown himself and start talking about everything. Feeling fearful for his life, the leader shouted that they were involved in the disappearance of the White Dragon Trade Association group. At this time, Silas was fighting with one of the members of the Crimson Wraiths. He used the victorious Fire Dragon Fangs technique. With its help, he fatally struck his opponent. The head tried to go easy on him, but the bandit turned out to be a stubborn bastard. Then he looked at his dead body and froze in amazement. Thick purple smoke was coming from the bandit's head. Realizing what was happening, Silas shouted to the others to get out of here, because it was a poisonous bomb. King, sitting on top of the leader, asked him for all the information related to the disappearance of the group. The guy learned a lot from what the man gave him. He wanted to ask something else. But then, not far from them, an arrow flew with a bag from which poisonous smoke came out. King immediately realized that it was a poisonous bomb, and with its help someone was trying to divert his attention. The guy immediately found himself in a suffocating cloud of gas, which was a distraction. Because the leader was no longer in the place where he lay, there was no way King would miss him, so he rushed after him. Flying over the treetops, the guy noticed the hiding leader. He ran even further than the young man thought. With the intention of catching him, the guy rushed into the thick of the trees. Before he could overtake the leader, he was immediately attacked. He might have been hit by a volley of arrows if he hadn't dodged it in time. The next second, another volley of arrows flew at King, but he was able to dodge them too. Then the guy noticed two bandits on a tree nearby who were trying to kill him. Flying closer, he cut their bows in half with his blade. Landing next to them, King warned them to answer his questions and then unnecessary bloodshed would be avoided. Without reacting to his words, the bandits rushed at him in an attempt to grab him. The men pressed themselves against King from both sides, bloating and releasing poisonous gas. They said this was only the beginning of the end. After these words, they exploded, releasing even more poisonous gas, but the guy instantly found himself on the ground, avoiding the blow. He didn't understand why the hell these guys blew themselves up and what they meant by the beginning of the end. The guy really hoped that Mr. Marl was okay, so he needs to hurry up and find it. As a result, King never found out anything and, moreover, missed the leader, so he has no choice but to return back. Along with this, the guy still managed to lose his sheath. At this time, the massacre was already over and Silas was giving orders to collect the bodies of the dead. It was also necessary to hurry up and begin to provide first aid to the wounded, and it was also necessary to find carts and horses that were not injured. All these bastards ended up blowing themselves up like this, that there wasn't even anything left of them. For the head, it was a shitty start to their stay in Unum province. River regretted that everything that happened now was because of him. Silas put his hand on his deputy's shoulder. He understood that anyone could make a big mistake. The leader believed that everyone will always face troubles, but the main thing is how they deal with them. Now they have to go and deal with more important issues. When they arrived at the place, Bert came to his senses and was already sitting in the cart. Silas from the younger generation showed respect to the venerable senior generation of the Tang family. River introduced himself and greeted him like this. Turning to the men and showing respect, Bert introduced himself back. He apologized for the trouble he and Camellia had caused them. And as a reward, he is willing to repay the White Dragon Trade Association tenfold. Camellia told Bert how much the two had done for them. Therefore, their actions will never be forgotten by the old man. River felt that he needed to apologize for his incompetence, due to which they were not immediately able to provide help. But Bert understood perfectly well that this was the true nature of Murim. Silas also asked for forgiveness. If they knew that Bert and Camellia were from the great Tang family, they would not hesitate to put their lives on the line to protect them. And they also did not think that this situation was within the power of the Iron Squad. Bert understood that they were the type that weighed people's lives based on their status. Silas replied that it was natural, because as Bert said, this is the true nature of Murim. Looking at Silas, the old man laughed, saying that he was absolutely right. This is exactly how this world works, and, apparently, he learned a valuable lesson today, for which he is grateful to the head. However, Silas may not expect anything in return because they must adhere to the true nature of this world. Because that is what the head told him, the man replied that it would be enough payment for them that the Tang family would not be resentful of them. As a result of his internal wounds, today Bert will stop at this. He thought that the head of the Iron Squad is not some ordinary bastard. Having lost interest in the two, Bert turned to Levi, who was sitting near the cart, with gratitude for the fact that he tried to protect him. But now the old man is going to cleanse this place of poison, so the boy should rest somewhere else. Camellia was worried about her uncle because he had not yet fully recovered to do this. But Bert reassured the girl, saying that thanks to her he was able to avoid serious injuries. Besides, now it's his turn to return the favor, and now this is the only thing he can do. Having sat down, Bert began to clear the place of poisonous gas. He used white toad cleansing, poison change, poison that brings life technique. River was surprised that the old man used poison to heal his internal wounds, but Silas explained to him that Bert is the one who learned not only to kill with poisons, but also to heal with them. Now it is clear why he is called the Master of Poisons. All this time, the head only knew his title, but he didn't know his name. let alone what he looked like, and this is because these guys are known to be quite exclusive since they decided to live only with their coworkers. Bert inhaled all the poison that was in the air. Then King appeared, who finally found his scabbard. Camellia considered him their savior. Seeing the guy, Bert thanked him for his help. The girl was glad that King was okay. The guy believed that anyone would have done the same in his place. Bert wanted to go and meet him. But King came earlier. The man had just finished circulating the poisonous chi inside himself, so now he couldn't move. He asked the guy not to be offended by this, for that he did not show all his gratitude. The young man understood this perfectly, and did not even think of being offended. But he was curious to know the man's well-being. Bert replied that thanks to the guy, he was able to recover, and as the owner of 10,000 poisons, the man will repay this debt. Silas and River silently watched their conversation from afar. Alex and Paula were bandaging Captain Ryan's wounds when Alex suddenly looked at King. She believed that starting from today, everyone in the Murim world would soon be talking about him. After some time, the group reached the province of Unnam, Gongmin. Camellia thanked Levi's bodyguard for his courage, but the boy objected, saying that he only blocked the enemy's attack, and if it weren't for the help of his older sister, he would not have been here a long time ago. Bert and King rode silently in front of the cart. The man had been watching for a long time as the guy sewed up his clothes torn in battle. Breaking the silence, he reminded that they had already arrived in Unnam province, so there should be a market area not far from here, where you can buy new clothes, and if King does not have enough money, he can buy them for the young man. The guy appreciated Bert's kindness, but politely refused his offer, adding that these clothes were a gift from his dear friend. Marley brought them for King to wear when he grew up, and he especially chose colors associated with the Northern Heavenly clan. Bert was surprised that this guy knew when to be grateful and humble. Taking a break from his sewing, King asked the man how he was feeling. Bert replied that he had fully recovered and it was all thanks to the guy. King believed that the man had recovered thanks to his own strength, but the elder Tang objected, saying that if it were not for the guy, he would have long since rotted in the grave. Watching King, Bert reflected that it was rare to see such a young man in this day and age, not to mention that he had most likely honed his martial arts to an incredible level, and to do so, he must have studied under the best master or be from a famous family. Then the man noticed that King had a wound on the left side of his body. The guy replied that it was just a scratch and he would feel better after a short sleep. Handing something to the young man, Bert said that there is no need to refuse. It is very important to take care of yourself in your youth so that it does not get worse when he gets older. After decades of research, the man created these instant-acting medicinal pills called Silver Scarlet Sacred Pills. Bert added that they can be used as an antidote, and they can also improve the internal state of the body for 10 years. Looking at the pill, King felt that it was too much for someone like him, because they must be expensive. Bert agreed that they were expensive. These were medical pills made by him. The owner of 10,000 poisons, however, for saving his life. This was still not enough, so the man insisted that the guy take them. The man also recommended using them in situations where life is at risk. That's all Bert can give the guy now. Before King had time to thank the man, Camellia sheepishly approached him, asking if Mr. King would continue to travel with the White Dragon Trade Association. The guy replied that he had already reached his destination, so most likely it was better for him to stop traveling with these guys. Hearing these words, Levi stared questioningly at his older brother. It was obvious to King that he was only causing them trouble, which means the guy would be more of a burden to them than a help. Camellia invited King to come with them. They planned to stay at the Broken Fist clan for a while to meet some martial artists from the Central Heavenly Alliance. Hearing about this clan, the guy's eyes filled with furious rage. The 9 inviolables who now rule the Murim world, the 9 heavens of the Central Heavenly Alliance, the 9 Central Heavens. Martial artists whose strength is equal to their rank number. The 4 pillars that once proudly supported the Northern Heavenly clan are the Great 4 of the Northern Heavens. Of these 4, there was a person who shared a very close relationship with King's father, and he was the one he proudly called uncle. However, he was the first to betray his father on that tragic day. Phil Wright. With this betrayal, he gained the trust of the Central Heavenly Alliance and settled in Unnam province with the goal of creating the Broken Fist clan. Camellia believed that the Broken Fist clan could find Uncle King. It shouldn't be a difficult task for them. King was grateful for the offer, but was forced to refuse it. There are things he must do now, but he promised that after he finished his business, he would definitely find them. The girl, although she was upset, had no choice but to agree with King. She asked to find them as soon as the guy was ready. Handing the stone to the young man, she explained that this is a jade mark. Within the Tang family, only a small number possess it. With this, even the Central Heavenly Alliance will not be able to doubt his power, and King will be able to safely visit them. King gratefully accepted the mark from the embarrassed girl's hands. Bert watched the two all this time and noticed that flowers were blooming in Camellia. Looking at her uncle, the girl saw a grin on his face. This made Camellia turn red like a tomato. Bert advised King to be careful. Even the city of Gongmin in Unam province was in a state of panic. The fact that the Central Heavenly Alliance called them already shows how bad the current situation is, so the guy should take care of himself. King replied that he would remember Senior Tang's words. After some time, they finally arrived at the main gate of the Broken Fist clan. At this point, it was time for the Tang family members and the rest to split up. Turning directly to King, Bert hoped that they would meet again, and Camellia would be eagerly waiting for him. The guy thanked the two for everything and wished them good luck on their journey. Leaving behind her uncle, Camellia took another look at King, with whom their paths would not cross soon. Approaching Captain Ryan, the guy thanked him for everything he had done for him. The man looked questioningly at the young man. Now that they have arrived in Unnam province, he thinks it is best for them to go their separate ways. King was grateful that he was allowed to go to Unnam with everyone. He also apologized for the trouble he caused. Turning to look at the two, Silas realized that King was leaving them. It was a huge loss for him to miss a person like him. Silas thought that this guy's personality might not be the best, but since he is very strong, he would like to recruit him into the Iron Squad. But, unfortunately, King is the one whom Silas is unable to tame. However, the man had a feeling that they would meet again one day, in a world where even close people can betray you. The head hoped that the next time they met, they would not be enemies. Ryan thought that traveling with this guy would definitely keep them safe. However, judging by the state of the bodyguards, they are afraid of him. And an Iron Squad under contract is guarding them. They can't help but feel that their pride has been hurt, and therefore are keeping a close eye on King. Now everyone is on edge, and the mood does not look good. Not to mention that this person will not do something for money. He does not act based on his own benefit. After weighing the pros and cons, Ryan made the guy's decision. They would also do everything possible to find his uncle, and if King could find out anything about the Third Master or the bodyguards who were missing, Ryan asked him to let them know. Suddenly, Levi thanked Captain Ryan for everything he had done for him. The man did not expect that the boy was going to go with this man. He warned Levi that the path King would take would be very difficult and dangerous. The boy replied that his older brother was the person who showed him the path to his dream, so he wants to see where Levi's dreams will take him. King did not even imagine that the boy would want to go with him, leaving his home. With a wink at him, Levi said that although he doesn't look like it, he is quite familiar with the area, plus the boy can read maps, so he won't be a burden and can protect his life with his own hands, so King can't worry about it. Ryan should have assumed that this would be the case. After all, Levi spent all this time with this man, but the captain respected the boy's choice, so he agreed. He reminded that if Levi ever wants to return, then the doors of the White Dragon Trade Association will always be open to him. Ryan will be waiting for his return. Watching this farewell, Paula did not expect them to leave so soon. First, King was a man they could lay claim to. Looking after the departing guys, the girl started singing his words that he was from the north. Phil Wright was glad that Senior Tang and his niece were able to get here safely. Bert said that they were attacked while traveling. The clan leader replied that he had already sent oracles from the Broken Fist clan's intelligence bureau, so it was only a matter of time before they were able to find out their identities. As long as they are in Unnam province, they will not escape his eyes. Once their identities are established, they will regret their actions. Every time he says this, a shiver runs down Ryan's spine. Have the Great Four of the Northern Heavens always been so strong? Now the man understands why they were unhappy, remaining the side heads of the Northern Heavenly clan. From what Bert saw, they were not ordinary bandits from the mainland. Fortunately, they received help. Without that person, they would not have been able to get here. Phil considered this a gift from heaven, the savior of the Tang family, also the savior of the Broken Fist clan. He asked Bert to tell him his name, and in return the head would generously reward him. The man replied that he could not find out who this man was, but he was sure that they would meet again. Then Bert would know his identity, but he was a magnificent young man who would never let Phil down. Phil Wright couldn't wait to meet their savior. At this time, King and Levi decided to relax at the hotel. The boys said that the rooms in this tavern were quite good, and it was also one of the best establishments in the city. King praised the guy for a good job, Levi said with a smile to leave it to him. The young man warned Levi that he was going in search of one person. The boy wanted to go with him after they rested a little. King refused his offer saying that it would probably take a few days, so he wanted Levi to stay and develop his fighting abilities. As he said before, the boy needs to make sure that he holds his hands correctly, as well as concentrate. While collecting as much chi as possible, the protagonist said that he would check his progress upon his return, so he advised Levi to work hard. The guy was worried that his older brother was leaving him behind, but still wished him to be careful. As King descended the stairs, he turned to a tavern worker. He immediately ran up to the guy to help him. King asked him about a man named Scholar of Three Minds, Alexander Nicole, whom Lucas had told him about. The worker immediately realized that he was talking about that crazy madman. At some point in his life, he was known as a genius. But one day he went crazy, and he is still in that state, so he was also nicknamed the Mad Scientist. The guy hinted that first he needed to pay, and only then he would tell everything. King understood without words, handing him a handful of gold coins. Now the worker remembered that if he turned onto the main street and walked north, he would arrive in the slums. There is a place called West Wind Tavern, although they say that it is a tavern, but in fact it is an ordinary gambling house. Needed Kinguman appears there. The guy warned the departing visitor that he needed to be very careful. The people in that area were not kind. Without turning around, King said that he would be very careful. Arriving at the West Wind Tavern, King came across 3 thugs. They thought that the guy was definitely out of his mind to come here in search of Alexander. The goon who was sitting on a chair behind everyone could not understand why this guy had come here looking for this bastard. Besides, they were busy cleaning up the mess he had created here. King did not understand what these people meant and what happened here. Rising from his place, the leader now understood everything. For him, everything fell into place. Pointing his finger at King, he shouted that this bastard must have been sent by that crazy madman, so he must be taken. The guy had already realized that in such situations, small beatings had already proven their effectiveness. So he used the crushing fingers technique. Having dealt with everyone, King pointed his fingers threateningly at the remaining one. The thug realized that this guy was a martial arts master. They had messed with the wrong person. Kneeling down and trembling with fear, he rattled off that he would tell everything he knew. King was glad that they could finally talk properly. The man introduced himself as Josh Hope. He is the owner of a gambling house. He said that one day a crazy madman, Alexander Nicole, appeared out of nowhere and cleaned out the gambling house. Thieves usually have a limit on what they steal, but not him. He stole a huge amount of money from them, and they are not the kind of people who earn an honest living. So they need money to run a gambling house in order to live in abundance. Therefore, in order to get their money back and prevent people from being deceived in the future, they plan to cut off at least one hand of the madman. But he laughed non-stop as he pointed his finger up. They thought he was just crazy, but then their thoughts suddenly became hazy. And the next thing they saw when they looked up was, there were the most beautiful girls Josh had ever seen. They were literally goddesses. The girls were so seductive that they could not resist and made love with bags of money in the middle of a crowd of spectators who laughed loudly at them. Alexander concluded to the whole audience that the carnal desires of these people prevail over their minds, or perhaps these guys lack self-control, so they are no different from animals. King realized that the man had immersed them in his illusions. Josh added that while all this was going on, the bastard took the money and ran away. Running a gambling house requires a tough image. But that day he destroyed their image, so the business is doomed. King asked the man where he could find that person. Josh replied that he did his best to find his location and kill him, but was unable to find out much. The last he heard about the madman was that he was appearing at the livestock market on the outskirts of the city. But the man was not sure the truth it is or not. Josh asked King to stop threatening him and quickly go in search of Alexander, because he was very afraid of him. When the guy got to the cattle market, the man was not there. But the owner said that this crazy madman bought 10 healthy bulls a few days ago, and it seems that he saw that Alexander led them to that city. When King came to the city, the farmer told him that he had started a competition between the bulls. Thanks to him, they were able to get a little profit. He thinks that they got enough to organize a big banquet. After the competition was over, he gave the bulls to the townspeople and left in that direction. Climbing the mountain, the boy said that that man started a fight with their main monk. The fight was quite hot. His master lost and went into isolated training to train as an ascetic. The last time the boy saw Alexander, he went in that direction, pointing with a finger. King was already tired of the persecution. By this time, he would have already found Mr. Marl. He did not know where to go and where to look for this scientist of 3 minds. King did not understand why the senior follower of the Gongdong Monastery, Lucas, tasked him with finding such a peculiar person. The guy still couldn't say that his actions were consistent, but apparently, he is trying to find out the real nature of a person. There is something about that man that attracts King. Now the guy has become even more interested in finding out what kind of person he is. Seeing a stone in his path, King stared at it questioningly. He was sure that he had seen the same one at the entrance to this forest. The main character couldn't believe that he had actually fallen into someone's illusion. The guy couldn't even understand that he was in it, while feeling the entire area with his chi. The stones suddenly began to sharply deform, giving themselves the appearance of a person. Several humanoid creatures of enormous size appeared in front of King. The guy was impressed by such an unusual illusion. The creatures suddenly rushed to attack towards the guy. King fell into a stupor for a second. He realized that this man's strength was not something to laugh at. Closing his eyes, he ordered himself to calm down and not worry, because this was nothing more than an illusion technique. As soon as he put his thoughts in order, the mirage completely disappeared. In the battle of wits, the one who is wiser wins. However, pure strength can also be used. Therefore, the time has come for the scientist of three minds to show up. King completely stripped the trees of their leaves, causing the madman to appear. Immediately, the discouraged scientist of three minds, Alexander Nicole, appeared in front of the guy. A little later, King and Alexander were already drinking hot tea. The scientist did not believe it at first when he learned that King was able to defeat Lucas from the Gongdong Monastery. But the guy calmly replied that he wouldn't lie about something like that. Looking at King intently, Alexander thought that Lucas was a little stubborn and his character was terrible. But he was far from a weakling, so he couldn't believe that someone like this guy could defeat him. The man assessed that judging by his appearance, King was not strong, but he should at least be above the peak rank. After thinking everything over, the scientist called King a naughty boy, to which the guy stared at him in amazement. He explained that he could tell for sure that the young man has incredible power, but deliberately hides it, so he is a naughty boy. Looking at his reflection in a cup of tea, King replied that he just wanted to live to old age. Taking a sip of tea from a mug, Alexander agreed with the guy because braggarts don't live long. People like King live long, because they hide their strength well. Suddenly changing his face, the scientist asked the young man how he was able to break through his illusions. Maybe his obsessions were so obvious or the calculations had to be perfect. The man was confident in his ability to read the signs of the heavens. Had he really been wrong all this time? Alexander began to go through all sorts of reasons for his failure, completely immersed in his reasoning. He still couldn't understand how King could break through his illusion so easily. Meanwhile, the guy silently looked at the distraught scientist. Do all geniuses have sudden changes in mood? After a second, King said that he just felt it. Alexander stared at him, dumbfounded. The guy explained that he used his senses, so he was able to understand where he needed to attack. The men simply stared at each other without saying a word. Alexander hoped that the guy knew that one mistake could cost him his life, even with amazing receptors. King was interested to know why the scientist's tactical illusions were so complex. The guy suggested that Nicole with such skills wants to capture the heavens or something like that. Laughing, Alexander replied that it would be nice and hoped that he would succeed someday. The madman asked the young man who he was, to which the guy replied that his name was King. But Alexander was not interested in his name, but who he really was. After a short silence, King replied that it did not matter and he had no personality. In this case, the scientist did not understand why the boy came to him if he behaved like this. The guy was simply satisfying his curiosity when his older brother Lucas said that he needed to meet Alexander. The man thought that King was sick for trusting Lucas so easily, following his feelings. The madman said that in this case the guy can ask him any questions, for example, the secret of his eternal youth or perfect skin. Roughly interrupting the man, King said that 6 months ago a person had disappeared in these places. He wanted to find out if the scientist knew about this. Alexander immediately realized that he was talking about the White Dragon Trade Association. To the guy's delight, this man knew something. Nicole asked about the man who disappeared, whether King was related to him by blood, to which the young man answered negatively. Alexander said that in that case it would be better for him to surrender, but King could not do this, because Marl is the one for whom he is ready to put his life on the line. The scientist advised King to go to the Jade City. He doesn't know the exact details, but recently something strange happened there. Since the flow of the markets does not look very good, Alexander, based on his feelings, is more than sure that it has something to do with the missing people. King thought about this Jade City for a second, and he immediately invited the scientist to go there with him. Alexander didn't want to join the young man because King doesn't know who he is, not to mention that he doesn't know anything about this guy either. The main character said with a smile that his heart told him so. With a crazy look, the man called the guy a real madman, since he talks about feelings and heart. But in any case, the madman saw no reason to interfere in King's affairs. He lives quite comfortably here too. Looking closely at his interlocutor, King assumed that he was simply chickening out. While he was trying to find this madman, the guy talked to many people. They all think that Alexander is crazy, but King sees that he is not crazy at all. Something just put him in this position. According to King's observations, the actions of a real madman are quite illogical and irrational, since their ability to reason is dulled. But there is logic and consistency in the judgments of a scientist. The guy believes that Alexander is trying to find out the truth of human existence, what people will do when they go beyond their limits, and how they will regain their ability to think sensibly. The madman is looking for answers to these questions. Alexander silently looked at King, realizing that he was not mistaken. Then he laughed sharply, hysterically, calling the guy a funny bastard. Having calmed down, he said that he did not want to join his journey anyway. As he left, he added that between heaven and earth stands a single man. With his existence, harmony is maintained. Without him, the world will lose a reason to exist, and in the end, their existence is interconnected. King thanked Alexander for the tea, and if fate willed it, they would meet again. Phil Wright and the other man were talking about the White Dragon Trade Association. They sent them another gift. This was the 6th request for help, including the Trade Association. These were the 6th merchants in Unnam province to go missing. The head of the clan silently looked at the rain falling outside the window, pondering the problem that had arisen. The eldest son of the Demon Fist, Ben Wright, advised his father to listen to their requests. Phil replied that he would deal with the problems in Unnam province. Looking at his son, he wanted to add something else, but he immediately turned away and said that he should just deal with the White Dragon Trade Association, and with that, he let Ben go. The man obediently bowed and hurried away. He was escorted by 2 servants to the reception area with the guests. Phil noticed that his son looked so weak and frail, unable to do anything. After Ben left, the head called Pin to him. The old man immediately appeared to his master. Phil told him that his son was fine, but he had a weak heart, and to become a ruler, you must not have a shred of doubt in your heart. So he wanted to know what Pin thought about Christian Non and his possibility of becoming the next head. The head of the Oracles and the Investigation Bureau of the Broken Fist clan, Pin replied that he was respected and quite insightful, and also good at his job. Raising his voice, Phil said that he would not inherit the clan. The head himself would worry about that. How will he take this news? In any case, Pin needs to make sure that Christian will be completely relieved of his affairs. Otherwise, if he finds out the truth, he will not stand still. The head of the Oracles asked the gentleman not to worry about Christian. They will bring him up to speed slowly. Phil was not satisfied with Unnam province alone. If he were satisfied, then he would have no reason to betray his dear brother, the head of the Ray clan. Northern Wall. Ray Tai was one who was content with his duty of preventing Silent Knight's invasion, and had no ambitions despite being capable of taking over the entire world. Phil had no idea why he lived by devoting himself to one single task. He believed that if you have an incredible amount of power, it is natural to use it. The Central Heavenly Alliance began to act. They even called the Tang family. Before the alliance makes a move, Phil must finish what he started. Bowing, Pin said that there was nothing to worry about, so he decided to follow his master. The man asked Phil to focus on the task in front of him, and he would deal with the rest himself. But he immediately warned the head that there would be a lot of blood, at least several hundred or possibly several thousand deaths. Smiling, Phil replied that if he was afraid of being offended, he would not have chosen this path. The head had not seen blood rain for a long time. Appearing in the meeting room of the Broken Fist clan, Silas introduced himself as the head of the Iron Detachment. He also introduced the man to his left, his deputy, River. To his right were Captain Ryan and Mistress Paula of the White Dragon Trade Association. Ben Wright was delighted to meet them all. Silas saw the eldest son of the Demon Fist, Phil Wright, for the first time. Taking his seat, Ben cordially invited his guest to sit down. Accepting the offer, Silas noted that unlike his father, he is not like a warrior, but he still has the pressure of a ruler, not to mention the fact that Silas feels the dignity of his speech and manners. With Ben's eyes sparkling and his movements graceful, the man can confidently say that he has the blood of a famous family running through his veins. Addressing the leader of the Iron Company, Ben said that he had heard about his brave exploits, and apparently this time he was recruited by the White Dragon Trade Association. Silas agreed with him and also said that they were doing everything possible to save the missing people. Ben realized that the head of the squad was a very reliable person, and his look is the same as his father's. Silas apologized for their arrival at such an ungodly hour, so he suggested getting straight to the point. He added that now they are at a loss, so they want to ask the Broken Fist clan for help. It's been 4 days since they arrived in Unam province, and they still haven't found any clues or any information regarding the missing people. Even the person they sent earlier has disappeared. Not to mention the situation that happened with the Crimson Ghosts put them in a difficult position. Therefore, in order to minimize future losses, they turned to the Broken Fist clan asking for help. Having listened carefully to his guests, Ben did not know what to answer. To defuse the situation, River added that by helping the White Dragon Association, one of the largest trade organizations in the whole world, the Broken Fist clan would also be able to improve relations with them. According to the deputy, this was a lucrative offer for them. Ben didn't know what kind of help they were expecting, military support or exchange of information. If they were looking for information, then he would be honest with them. Initially, they thought that this attack was planned by simple bandits, but after a series of disappearances, they realized that they were too overconfident. These issues are still under investigation, so there isn't much information for the clan to give. Pointing to Paula, Captain Ryan said that this time their young mistress was in charge of the trip. The man said that she is the younger sister of Mr. Loy, who recently disappeared, and therefore they are ready to do anything for the good of their family. Ben understood their situation, so he said that the Broken Fist clan would do everything they could to help them find their missing brother. Blushing, Paula respectfully thanked the young master. Ben reflected that, unfortunately, Paula was not the one he should negotiate with. The people who will bring the most benefit are the Iron Squad. Emerging from his thoughts, Ben said that it was time to move on to the main part of the conversation. He called out to the chief strategist. The man immediately responded to the young master's call. Ben hoped they would come to a favorable outcome. The man was sorry that honor and justice, things that no longer exist in the world of Muram, all this had disappeared. They equate the value and importance of people's lives with small gains. But it wasn't always like this. Ben remembered the northern region. These were rough and barren lands. Those were the times. And if compared with the present time, then he was really happy. Those peaceful times when he was not limited by anything. That boy asked his older brother to teach him martial arts. He didn't understand why his father made him always study. Ben replied that if he did this, he would get into trouble. The man asked the boy to wait until he grew up, and then Ben would teach him. He was truly sorry for what happened to King. However, he has already entered this path and cannot leave it. Even if this path leads him to a cliff, he still cannot. At this time, King was caught in the rain. Therefore, I tried to protect myself from it with a large leaf. He thought about what Alexander had said, that someone was planning something bad. It couldn't be that all this was happening just because someone wanted to take over Unnam province or the Broken Fist clan. But no matter who it was, when a guy is drawn into this situation, he will inevitably become part of their destiny. King had a feeling that the scientist knew more than he was saying, but at least he learned that he needed to go to the Jade City. The guy remembered that he was a thug and said the same thing, that he was nothing more than an object in the hands of someone else. But he was quite skilled. It's hard to imagine that he served anyone. There is a high probability that that man is the real mastermind behind all these incidents. Then King's keen hearing caught something unusual. The guy instantly turned towards the sound. It was the ringing of a lyre, but the melody coming from her was so ominous. King felt that this melody called to him. Rushing headlong in that direction, the young man realized that unlike becoming a master of a sword or blade, becoming a master of sound is much more difficult. Therefore, only the most skilled of them exist. King found the owner of the lyre sitting in the gazebo. He had this sinister sound art thing. The guy stopped a few meters from the guy playing the lyre. He had been eagerly awaiting King's arrival, and finally he was here. The main character said that he came here because he called him, and apparently the unknown person knows him, but King has no idea who this guy is. Apologizing for his rudeness, the man introduced himself as Asher Ike. He said that King was incredible, just like that man, and he was the first person to answer the call of his holy sound of 1,000 distances. King was beginning to understand what kind of that man he was talking about. Asher was sure that the guy had met him before. His name was Dwight Edmond. He was his close friend. King realized that Ike was the man who was responsible for the problems in Unnam province. Now he understood why Dwight told King so much. It was the first time Asher had seen his friend in such a pitiful state, so King became interesting to him. The guy politely asked the main character which martial arts school he studied at, to which King replied that he did not study in any school. His martial arts are something that was passed down to him from his family. Asher concluded that King's family must be impressive. The guy said that a lot of time has passed since his family was destroyed and forgotten. Asher's plans never included the possibility of a master like Mr. King existing. He was curious as to why the protagonist came to this place and whether he was summoned by the Central Heavenly Alliance. King replied that he had nothing to do with the Alliance, and he arrived in search of one person 6 months ago. One of his acquaintances, who worked with the White Dragon Trade Association, disappeared here. The guy needed to know if those people were still alive. Asher replied that they were still alive. The main character demanded to let them go, and if he did this, King would promise that he would leave this place. Usher could do this, however. It is not as easy as it looks at first glance. Taking out his blade, King inquired about the reason for this difficulty. Asher asked the guy to wait a little. It's difficult for him to explain everything now, just knowing that their release will put him in a difficult position. The guy suggested to King that after he completed his task, he would immediately bring these people back safely. Asher swore on his own name to keep this promise. King silently looked at the guy, not responding to his proposal. Asher realized that it was still not enough for the main character. He had finally found someone he liked. But, apparently, they are destined to shed their blood here. This was a sad outcome for Asher.